hate it when this happens. I've changed my mind during the news bulletin about the topic that I want to start with. We'll get on to the nanny state at 11 o'clock, the so-called nanny state. This is, I think, a really significant moment in Keir Starmer's leadership, actually, and indeed in his attempt to secure government, because he is essentially, I think that what's interesting about it is that the people he's promising to help are not voters. The people that he's promising to help don't have votes. Kids whose parents haven't been, for whatever reason, haven't been fully sort of educated on parenting issues and child rearing, that they don't have votes, and their parents are measurably less likely to vote than other people. Keir Starmer is appealing to members of this country who care about people in this country less fortunate than themselves, and it's an absolutely fascinating political gambit. It is, of course, that simple. An appeal to people who care about others, who care about people less fortunate than themselves, and we will examine the reality of that constituency after 11 o'clock today. But I am going to begin again with the post office scandal. I wasn't expecting to. The inquiry starts again today. The inquiry. How long has it been going on for? How long's the inquiry been going on for? I mean, a long old time. I think beginning of 2022 or something like that. It's a stretch. I forget precisely. And I know someone there. They've never seen a camera crew before. They've literally never seen. Maybe a camera crew turned up on the first day. Today it's like the Oscars. There's more camera crews there than there are at the Golden Globe Awards. They're absolutely extraordinary, and yet more evidence of this incredible. What's the word I'm looking for? This incredible sort of explosion of interest in this scandal, in this unfolding and continuing scandal. The latest evidence of it happened in the House of Commons yesterday, and it involved Rishi Sunak, essentially in response to a question from 30p Lee that was so bovine. It's a miracle he didn't moo while he was asking it. I mean, good Lord, I'm going to miss that guy. He's so good for business, isn't he? This sort of generation of super thick Tories. Did you hear Jake Berry getting himself in a right old pickle with Ian Hislop? Was it on Ian's show? Was it on Ian's show last? No, Andrew's show. No, Peston. It wasn't. For once, it wasn't one of our magnificent programs. Goodness me, they do bring an awful lot of joy to the national pageant, don't they? These no marks, but. I want to talk about this settlement, and I'm not quite sure why I want to talk about it, which is why I opened the programme this morning by saying I hate it when this happens. I hate it when I change my mind about what we're going to discuss without being fully clear on what we're going to discuss. I've just got a horrible feeling, and I want to know whether you do too. I've got a horrible feeling that a Prime Minister leading a party that's been in power for 14 years nearly, introducing some very sweeping and far-reaching legislation, potentially, as a consequence of the public response to a television programme, does not sound to me like a recipe for glory or success. I don't know whether he had he definitely had a choice. Do you know, I mentioned to you yesterday Sharon Shoesmith. I was desperately trying to remember the name of somebody who did, if you like, get thrown to the wolves as a consequence of a public sector malfeasance, as something going wrong in a department or in a sector of society and getting punished. And she was the director of children's services or the director of social services in the borough where baby P was murdered. And Ed Balls at the time was the minister responsible, and he sort of summarily sacked her on the spot. It was very performative, very tabloid-friendly behaviour. And I think she came back and won an appeal. She won a sort of judicial review sort of scenario and was found to have been unfairly dismissed. So it's really interesting to think that when you do respond to tabloid baying, you almost certainly do so in an overly hasty and ill-thought-through fashion. So I want to know what you think about this post office settlement. And I don't know, listen, I've got no qualifications. I hope that doesn't come as a major shock to anybody. I don't have any legal qualifications or particular legal insights. I just have a horrible feeling, that £75,000 for every single postmaster, it sounds a little bit paltry given some of the stories that we've heard. That just seems to me to be proof that Rishi Sunak has done this in order to be seen to be doing something, as opposed to adopting a thoughtful and far-reaching and, if you like, watertight response. Some postmasters have already said that their battle will go on. They've been offered £75,000 in compensation. That's those who were hounded by the post office and had to pay back cash that they hadn't stolen, so they were already hugely out of pocket. These are the ones who were never convicted of any offence. Has Rishi Sunak got it right? 0345 6060 973. And listen, I want to spend a moment exploring the possibility that he really has, okay? Because we spend an awful lot of time on this programme putting the boot into this government, largely because they're so awful in so many ways. Even their own cheerleaders now are moaning about the state of the country. The bloke in the Telegraph who was cheerleader-in-chief for Liz Truss is using the post office story as somehow evidence of the country. But you sort of sit there and think, you were cheerleader-in-chief for Liz Truss, mate. Do you think possibly you might be one of the reasons why the country's in a hole at the moment? The country's in a bit of a mess. You've been shilling for Boris Johnson, shilling for Brexit, shilling for the Tories. You've been going into bat for all of these terrible things that have damaged the nation in so many ways. But you're using the post office scandal to claim that a sort of faceless establishment is responsible for all of Britain's ills. These are strange times indeed. So we do spend a lot of time putting the boot into the government. But I do want this to be a good move by Rishi Sunak. I would, not least for the postmasters themselves, but also for our mental health. It would be nice, wouldn't it, if the Prime Minister had got something right for once. But I'm going to have to say those words again. It's a government, it's a party that's been in power for 14 years nearly, responding very hastily to a scandal that has been understood since 2009, so again, for 14 years, as a consequence of the public reaction to a television programme. That doesn't mean that he's got it wrong. It doesn't mean that it's hasty or ill thought through or knee-jerk, but it does mean that it might be. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And I'm going to add to that question, what would justice look like? It's a funny topic, this, because we are actually in a room full of experts. Everybody who has watched the programme or followed the story is actually an expert on this. It's almost impossible to think of another issue where the public is so well informed, albeit belatedly, but so well informed. Everybody is an expert. Everybody who's been following the story or watching the programme is now across the facts on a level that is close to unique for a radio phone-in topic. So normally when I say, I wouldn't ask you, what do you want to see? Or what does justice look like? Because, what do we know? We haven't got a clue. It's a bit like when a court verdict drops and, blowhards who weren't in court start shouting the odds about what a terrible verdict it was. And you sort of sit there and think, well, the jury heard all of the evidence. You've just read about it this morning in the Daily Mail. It's highly unlikely that you've got a better grasp of the facts than they have. But on this occasion, the opposite is true. Everybody who has watched Mr. Bates versus the Post Office has got a really deep grasp of the facts. Everybody who's been following the coverage subsequently has got a really good grasp of what has gone on. For example, I'm already being corrected or educated on some of these issues. The 75 grand, Tracy, Leanne in Gateshead tells me, is only for the 555 in the GLO. If we want more, it looks like we will have to have our case reviewed. So no, Rishi has not got it right. We have known about this miscarriage for years and they have dragged their feet. So we're going to move today into the politics of it and the response and the question of justice. Has he got it right? 0345 6060 973. And what does justice look like for you as either someone who, I think it looks like Leanne was involved in this story, or someone who, like me, has been watching it with a sense of disappointment and befuddlement. Disappointment in that I'm a member of the media, and this is very much something we could have been jumping up and down about a lot more than we did. One day, when the dust has settled, perhaps we'll have a conversation about why we didn't. and befuddlement, because I still can't quite get my head around the fact that a story that has been in the public domain and well known and well understood for a decade and a half has only captured the imagination of the public and only prompted a government response as a consequence of a TV drama. And that's why I'm already wondering whether it's a mistake to be generous towards Rishi Sunak this morning. I'm definitely offering you the opportunity to tell me that he's done well, but I'm afraid as a politician, responding to a scandal that's been in the public domain for a decade and a half simply because there's been quite a good drama on the telly, well, it doesn't necessarily fill one with confidence, does it? So those are the broad parameters of the conversation this morning, okay? We've got a fairly clear idea about what the first steps of the compensation will look like. The exoneration, I think uniquely in British legal history, it involves an admission that some people who were convicted of crimes they had committed are going to get let off as well, because it's the only way of quickly ensuring that everybody who was convicted of crimes they hadn't committed gets exonerated. But the question of what true justice would look like, and if you were caught up in this, if you were a sub-postmaster or family members were caught up in this scandal, what to you would justice actually look like? Okay? Donald puts it well. It's difficult, he says, because the victims need justice, but what they're getting is a Jerry Springer-style remedy to a really sensitive subject for which the government is fully responsible. The simplicity suits their modus operandi. Attempts to sort of pin it all on Ed Davey and Keir Starmer are in full swing as well. But I'm pretty sure the public are aware of who has been in power since 2010. And Private Eye started reporting on this story in 2011. Computer Weekly broke it in 2009. The timeline couldn't be worse for the Tories. But it won't stop client journalists trying to pin it on Ed Davey and Keir Starmer. We won't get bogged down in that nonsense. We instead will look at these two questions this morning. What would actual justice look like for the sub-postmasters? 0345 6060 973. And straight up, out of the blocks, what do you think of Rishi Sunak's move yesterday to exonerate everybody and offer 75 grand to the ones who have organised to complain about the fact that they were hounded to pay back cash they hadn't stolen and were therefore never convicted of any offence? Has Sunak done well? Or has he dropped another clanger? It's 10:16. Forgot to congratulate Carol. It's trending on Twitter. Congratulations, Carol. Carol Vorderman joining the team at LBC. God, we've been on a journey together, haven't we? Over the years. One of the best known and best loved broadcasters in Britain, signing for the radio station, and no one bats an eyelid. It's a perfectly logical appointment. 20 years ago, they were hiring complete non-entities like me to present the prestigious mid-morning slot. That is some journey, isn't it? From complete no-marks that nobody's ever heard of to one of the best loved and best known broadcasters in the country. And it's, I don't do this very often, but it is a testament to the talent of the people that run this place that we have, no, not you, Keith, that we have ended up in this sort of situation. If you haven't caught Carol on air yesterday, you probably don't need me to tell you that she is an absolute natural, but also a really, really good fit for us at LBC. I wouldn't mess with her. I wouldn't mess with her for all the tea in China. It is 20 minutes after 10, and there's something that's sticking in my craw about Rishi Sunak's move yesterday, but I am conscious of my own innate biases. I think he's awful as a Prime Minister. That's not an opinion, that's just counting. But it doesn't mean that he's got this wrong. I just need your help, really, in working out whether or not I am responding in my own knee-jerk way to his knee-jerk response to this story, or whether actually it is suboptimal behaviour regarding the sub-postmasters. Kwame is in Hackney. Kwame, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. How you doing?
I'm pretty good, mate. What's on your mind?
Yeah, just like my previous call when I said about the appointment of 30p Lee was kind of like playing 3D chess. This is the exact same tactic from Rishi Sunak. He believes that he can use this as a way to win the working class vote as well. Because
look at me, I've helped. Please don't mention the fact that my party had a decade and a half to do this and only got around to it in January 2024.
Exactly that, especially when he's been overseeing the Fujitsu contracts. And he's trying to shift attention away from what's been going on in the Conservative Party lately with the Home Secretary's comments. I mean, crikey, he should have been fired.
You mean the Rohitner? Well, that ship has sailed. The news cycle's a funny thing, isn't it? But fish and chip paper tomorrow, headline news today. Now, you could be suffering from what I worry I'm suffering from, Kwame. And, we could both. You've got a problem with this government for obvious reasons, a problem with lots of people in it for obvious and well-documented reasons. But it doesn't mean that what they did yesterday was the wrong thing to do. What, for example, could he have done instead?
Well, what he could have done instead is that in regards to the situation, very early on, when it came out, I think you said this has been going on for 20 years. And actually, was it 2018,
2009, the story broke in Computer Weekly. 2011, Private Eye picked it up. And shortly after that, Nick Wallace got stuck in and stayed with it like a dog with a bone for until today.
I think you said from 2019 the police got involved. I don't remember, but just vaguely from yesterday, your comments yesterday.
2019 was when the judgment came in that people had been...
There, even from there. And for you to say that you can deduce what kind of compensation can be paid to these people within a week, I think that's very reactive. It's just not proactive at all.
Yeah, that's
He's just using this as a political scoring, just especially now when you heard Keir Starmer announced some of these policies in regards to what he wants to do for some of the working class people. And again, like you said, he's not looking to win those. What he's targeting is not people who would actually win votes from, but he's just showing the caring nature in terms of what he wants to achieve when he comes into part of that.
Well, we'll get on to that in the next hour. But the idea that Sunak felt he had to do something and therefore did something does not mean he has done the right thing, or indeed that the thing he has done is good, actually, apart from it being something. We have to do something. We've done something. Mission accomplished. But I don't know. Maybe we need to dig a little deeper into the detail. The weirdest element of this is that ministers have agreed that people who were guilty of crimes will be exonerated. I've got no idea what the numbers are, but the way that the legislation will work, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it before. It will be a mechanism that declares anyone who has been found guilty of a post office scandal-related offence during a specific time frame, so they'll put dates on it, will have their conviction quashed the minute the ayes have it in the House of Commons, effectively. Unless my constitutional understanding of the issues is askew, in which case you know what to do, 0345 6060 973. The minute the ayes have it in the House of Commons, everyone who has been convicted of a crime related to the post office scandal between 2000 and something and 2000 and something will be immediately exonerated, including people, uncounted people, who did actually steal money or commit crimes. That's mad. But again, I'm not sure that I could now explain how things could have been handled better. These people deserve justice. Justice delayed is justice denied. The only way they can get justice ASAP is by including people who are guilty of crimes in the mass exoneration. I don't know. I just think it's interesting and a little bit troubling. Kwame seems troubled as well, although I'm sure he won't mind me saying that neither of us have managed to fully articulate the source of this discombobulation. 10:25 is the time. Patrick is in Lambeth. Patrick, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello.
Hi. I've been following this whole saga for a number of years now, and I wanted to pick up on a point you made. Is why has it taken this programme to suddenly get politicians' attention? I mean, I remember watching a Panorama documentary back in 2015 presented by John Sweeney, where he laid it out very clearly in a way that you and I could both understand in the context of what's being discussed today.
Yes.
So why did nothing happen? Well, let me think. We're coming into a general election year. Rishi Sunak is extremely unpopular in a personal sense, and his party is on the floor. So, this is probably a way to be seen to be doing something to look prime ministerial and to hopefully, you think, earn a few votes or at least change the sentiment,
Right,
the mood
well,
music.
You put me in a very unfamiliar, but not necessarily uncomfortable position, in that I am giving him the benefit of the doubt on this. I don't think... Listen, there'll be some cynical calculation involved. Of course there will. But even if he was absolutely acing it in the polls, even if he was odds on to become to retain the keys to Downing Street come November or whenever the election is, even if he was the most popular Prime Minister in the history of polling, Patrick, I think he still would have done this.
Well, one hopes that the obvious rights that need to be awarded to the affected individuals would mean that he would. Yes. But I do think there's probably added impetus because of the situation we're currently in the political cycle, and in particular, where he and his party are located in the polls.
Yes, so, we can. I don't think we're arguing. So I can accommodate what you've just said, but it doesn't mean what he's done is the wrong thing to do.
And I have concerns like you about the proposal that appears to be putting forward. I haven't had a chance to look at the fine print, but I am a lawyer, and the lawyer in me naturally dislikes any attempt by Parliament to overrule judges' decisions. But equally, I understand that the driver here, which I do accept is really important to the individuals, is the fact that the courts are so slow, and at the moment they're in a parlous state. And I would say that's
he can't say that, can he? He can't say. No, one of the reasons why we're bringing in such a blunt instrument is because we've provided over an absolute collapse in the criminal justice system over the last 14 years.
Which goes back to when Liz Truss was Secretary of State for Justice, by the way. That's when a lot of courts started closing. And I know
long before any lockdowns, just in case anybody's falling for that baloney.
Correct. So, I mean, the criminal justice system is in a very dire state and can't cope with this extra volume of appeals. I think the actual way in which we look at appeals...
Actually. Yeah.
I think the actual way we look at criminal appeals is wrong and needs to be rethought. But can I just say one thing? I mean, this proposal, and it may be ultimately the best way of exonerating the guilty people at speed that can be come up with in the current circumstances, it's only a little piece of the jigsaw, because if you are one of those individuals, you're going to want a lot more. You're going to want to understand what was going on at Fujitsu, what was going on at the post office across a period that spans into 2 and a bit decades of time. Yeah. It's not all about Paula Vanells. It's not all about Ed Davey. There were lots of people in post at relevant times when things were happening. And we're only going to get those answers through the public inquiry. Now, the problem with that is that although those processes are quite good, they take forever.
They certainly do.
And where I'm at the moment is we need to think about whether there's a better way of getting to the bottom of these scandals. But I take heart from one thing I heard recently. That is that Baroness Hallett is going to publish some interim findings this summer in relation to the COVID inquiry. Yes. So maybe there is a way of making the system of public inquiries work better through this sort of idea of interim findings coming out, where they just take a very phased approach.
And of course, by the time they come out, sometimes the public interest has moved on wrongly, but inevitably, and the reaction, therefore, or the response, or the clamour for justice will be more muted. Patrick, I am out of time, but I sense you haven't finished. Can you, given that you're a lawyer, I'm going to invite you to offer your closing remarks in a single sentence.
So good start, but much more needs to be done.
Look at that. It's coming out to 10:30. Dominic Ellis is here with your headlines. 33 minutes after 10 is the time. We made a little list yesterday of perhaps comparable scandals, or scandals that had a similar feel to them, Hillsborough and Grenfell being in the forefront of our minds. The more I thought about it, and I did so after the programme, prompted in part actually by then hearing Amelia Gentleman, the rather brilliant Guardian journalist who did more than anybody else to drive the issue into the public consciousness. The more I thought about it, the more I thought that Windrush is probably the one that ticks the most post office scandal-shaped boxes in terms of the obfuscation by authority, the penalisation, is that a word? The penalising of completely innocent people, the lives being turned upside down, the endless horror, the anxiety dream nature of that David and Goliath or Kafkaesque battle with bureaucracy. And I noticed the Windrush Lives Twitter account, which I heartily recommend, has just published a lengthy and rather excellent thread on precisely that point, drawing precisely those parallels, and indeed mentioning Amelia Gentleman and Nadine White, of course, who also covered this story when the rest of us were lagging a little bit behind the curve. But you're looking at, it's a long old thread, 20-odd individual tweets. But if you have a proper look at it, you'll appreciate that it would be talking about things that the government could do to get ahead of the Windrush scandal. It could be 10 years, perhaps, before the full horror of what happened there is completely understood. It might take another TV drama, perhaps, to achieve it. But on we go. And I am in the unfamiliar but important position this morning of giving Rishi Sunak the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that he has done what he did yesterday because of his electoral woes, because of his dismal poll figures. But I do think he might have done it because he felt that he had to do something. And the idea of a bill passed in Parliament in full knowledge that it will exonerate some guilty people is troubling. But maybe it is a price worth paying to exonerate all of the innocent people. And then, of course, there is the problem of the compensation, the compensation for people who were not sent to jail or who were not convicted of any crime. They've been offered just £75,000. We haven't booked any guests on this apart from Richard Brooks, who was the private eye journalist at the forefront of coverage. But I probably should have spoken to some of the people in precisely that category about how they feel about this offer of just £75,000. If that's you or your mum, give me a ring on 03456060973. In the meantime, the rest of us will just carry on picking away at it in the hope, I think, of ending up in a positive frame of mind, because goodness knows there are enough days when we end up inevitably across the negative responses that this government daily demands. Robbie's in Chelmsford. Robbie, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello.
I'm firstly absolutely delighted that you're still talking about this and that you changed your mind. There's no point having a mind if you can't change it after all. But I am uncharacteristically nervous, so please bear with.
Of course I will.
I've been waiting to call on this, and the perfect time. I'm so passionate about making sure that the postmasters individually get their justice. There's a very powerful walk around on Newsnight last night where each of some of those have had some of the worst injury possible to their lives, tell their story. And I come at it from the perspective of them, really, because they are the ones who need justice. And the majority of them, from what we've been hearing across various segments on LBC and the other media, I don't think they are happy. They don't feel the need to just kneel down and say, oh, thank you very much, Mr. Sunak, that's brilliant. I will give the government credit in that, like the rest of politics, they have, first point, acknowledged that there needs to be an urgent expediency to having some exoneration and that part of their justice.
Yes.
The bit that concerns me, and I think comes across in many of the postmasters' feedback, is the rectification and remediation, which are some very unsexy words, but I come at this having worked as an SME, if you like, in some large name banks I won't name, but making sure customers who have come to far less harm than some of these postmasters got their financial justice, if you like. And the whole point of that is to take them back to the point they would have been in had none of the issues ever arisen. So had they never lost their homes, had they never lost their marriages and had them broken down. And some of those things, cynically, you could say you can't put a price on. But unfortunately, in capitalism, there's a price on everything, and it is not the amount that is being offered by the government. So I think, as I said to your producer, my concern is the people who want proper fiscal justice even will have to go through years and years when this has inevitably moved off the front pages, and they will be forgotten in their fight unless there are champions for them.
And that's a really important point, and it ties in a little bit with the allusions to Windrush that I made just before you came on, because that's another very good example of the spotlight moving on, isn't it? How do you think, drawing on your professional experience, Robbie, how do you think they settled on £75,000?
I've no earthly idea, honestly, James. I don't know the sums involved, I have to say that. But what I can tell you is just from the feedback of the postmasters and mistresses themselves, that is rankly inappropriate. I think the phrase by Jo, who is one of the prominent postmistresses who was criminally convicted, said in her own words on Politics Live yesterday, it doesn't touch the sides. And I like there's also real people who express themselves in real terms.
Language,
right?
yes, I agree with you. Not using words like rectification and remediation. But there's also some widespread unhappiness, I think, about this document that everyone would have to sign, stating that they have not committed a criminal offence.
I'm less animated over that, but I can completely understand, having watched the drama and what they've already been through, why they might view that quite cynically. These people, in some of their interviews, what's come across is the deeply embedded mistrust with not just, the governing party, but all parties, all institutions, the people that have wronged them. And my last point, if I may, James, I know your time is precious. Wow. My last point would be... my last point would be that there is no justice without accountability. Yeah. And without sounding mean, and I will not name names because I'm not an expert on all of those, but there must not, and I worry, this is my cynicism, I worry that they want this to move off the front pages and the money to go into people's accounts so they can say, job done, move on, let's not talk about any of our
probably start boasting about anymore. It. Probably start patting themselves on the back and doing a lap of honour. I mean, you're right to remind us what some of the key players have already said, and Alan Bates being the most prominent player on the front page of today's Daily Mirror. Mr. Bates, it's not enough. That is his response to the announcement by Rishi Sunak yesterday that hundreds of wrongly convicted post office staff will be cleared with compensation from £75,000. He said it's not enough to cover the trauma. And Robbie was a really helpful caller, wasn't he? Because that there are things you can't put a price on. Money helps. There's a remarkable story today of a family whose son was killed in a helicopter crash in the Grand Canyon, receiving $100 million in compensation. I don't know if you're familiar with the Monkey's Paw, the W.W. Jacobs play, but that is a sum of money that you would dream of, but not under any circumstances would you want to receive it at all if it involved the death of your son. But they put a price, is what Robbie just said. It does. You do have a price on everything. How do you compensate somebody for a marriage that broke down under the pressure of this experience, or for the theft of their time, the theft of their life, the reputational damage? I'm not sure you can. And I've got no idea how they settled on £75,000, but somebody has done the calculation. I haven't, I'm afraid, checked your sums yet. It's less than 1/10,000th of Rishi Sunak's personal fortune, apparently. I don't know whether that's relevant or not, but it's interesting. Thank you, Robbie. Charles is in Mould in North Wales. Charles, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello, mate.
I think this is a second-rate justice. I don't think it's appropriate. I'm thinking of the poor postmasters walking through their local community, being accused of being thieves. And
kids getting bullied at school. One of them was, I think it was Castleton, I forget his Christian name, yesterday. Children being bullied at school as well. Your dad's a thief, that kind of thing. It's grim, isn't it? Grim.
Exactly that. And this is just a blanket exoneration. So you might be guilty, you might not be guilty, but we'll call you not guilty. And so in the local community, they'll be thinking, well, okay, you're not guilty.
There's no smoke without fire.
There's no smoke without fire, but did you really do it? And it's, I feel very, very sorry for the sub-postmasters being in this situation, and it's almost a bit as if they're forced into this. But really, there should be some sort of fast track. I know this is dreaming the impossible. Fast track through the Court of Appeal. I mean, it takes two to tango. Presumably, the Post Office could come to the Court of Appeal and say, we don't oppose this appeal. And I understand that, because if you did fast track, it would mean resources going to that and other people.
Well, some of them will appeal. So the people who will go further are the people who don't think £75,000 comes close to compensating them for losing their home, their business, their earning potential in that period. They might have cashed in their pensions. I'm quoting Alan Bates now. There's been vast costs over the years. We're talking over 15, 20 years. It's certainly going to be more than £75,000. And he also says, how can you put a price on the post-traumatic stress disorder that many of us are suffering?
But I agree with that. But I think, to my mind, there's two issues. There's a question of guilt and there's a question of remuneration and restoration. And £75,000 would be fine as an interim payment, providing that the parties got their act together and made a decent amount. But there are two issues. I mean, I think the £75,000 is derisory, but I think the most important thing, I will think for a lot of postmasters, I don't know, I'm not one, but I would think is the question of guilt properly proven that you are not guilty and found in a court of law.
I hadn't thought of that. That's you've nailed it. I knew it was causing misgivings, and I knew there were problems with it. But when you combine the fact they have to sign this document saying I didn't commit a crime with the fact that everyone acknowledges that some guilty people will be exonerated as a consequence of this, it doesn't feel like a sort of crystal clear exoneration. There is still room, as you say, for bad actors to sniff a bit, to not be persuaded. That still hangs stigma. There you go. I got there in the end. There could still be some stigma attached to it because of the nature of the exoneration compensation package announced yesterday. That's really good. 10:45 is the time. It is, of course, an interim payment in a sense, as Colin has asked me to clarify. But some people will accept it. This is the words of Alan Bates, with respect, Colin, are probably a little bit more across the facts than you are. Alan Bates said yesterday, the overturning of convictions is very good news, but the priority remains full financial redress to everyone impacted. £75,000 is an alternative to having your case independently assessed. So for the smaller cases, it will probably suffice, but for many cases, it is not enough. It's 10:46. Have we got one yet? Have we got a jingle for Smear Keir? Everyone else has started joining in. Have you noticed? Trending on Twitter and all sorts of things. I think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a consequence of us pointing out how desperate the smearing was getting. But I think we're the only ones at the moment with a radio feature that doesn't currently have a professional jingle, because they're all too busy looking after Andrew Marr or the newsagents, or Chris Moyles, who also, of course, works in this building. I bet Carol Vorderman's got jingles coming out of her ears, and she hasn't even started yet on the official sort of team sheet. But there we go. She'll be with you on Sunday. I've got two entries, one from Mike and one from Michael. And this is currently what we're going to have to go with one of these.
Smear Keir.
That's Mike's, a cartoonist, and I think you probably need to see it in context. The Trumpton Twitter account. And yesterday I received one from Michael, which you can listen to now.
Smear Keir.
That's quite unnerving. I am looking for more entries. Tweeting it to me is one way of doing it, or you can send it direct to the producer, which is eleanor.walsh@global.com. That's eleanor.walsh@global.com. And of course, I may get some production from the actual top team of production people that work in the same building as me, the presenter of the biggest show on LBC, but so far, nada. Nothing. Diddly squat. Not even replying to my emails, to be honest with you. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Michael. One of those will, as things stand, become the official Smear Keir theme tune. But I need a story, don't I? I need a Smear Keir story. I couldn't believe this when I read it. In fact, I had to find a copy of the Daily Express. I had to go on, because I thought no one's going to treat this as a proper story. Then I thought, I bet the Daily Express are. So at PMQs yesterday, You may have noticed Keir Starmer pointed out that because he looks at the world from his private jet as he jets around the country, he doesn't actually know what it's like to be living here at the moment. He simply, the words he used, doesn't the country deserve so much better than a Prime Minister who simply doesn't get Britain? This sentence was uttered immediately after the one that said, point out that the view on the ground is very different to that from his private jet. And he says, you're talking the country down. Now, how is this a Smear Keir? Because apparently that makes Keir Starmer racist. Yeah, I'll say that again. This is a racist dog whistle, according to, even Downing Street, actually, because they responded by saying the Prime Minister is as British as Starmer. So deeply, deeply dishonest Downing Street spokesman, pretending that when Keir Starmer accused Rishi Sunak of being horribly out of touch with the experiences of ordinary British people, he was actually claiming that because he is the son of immigrants, he doesn't understand what it's like to be British. And it's not just a lie, it's a disgusting lie that demeans racism. And it's also quite an odd lie, given that being racist is almost a requirement for high office in the Tory party at the moment. or certainly deploying jingoistic and xenophobic attitudes to immigration. So that is today's smear Keir. He points out that the Prime Minister jetting around the country in his private jet hasn't got a clue what it's like to be struggling to pay your energy bills or struggling to survive in broken Britain. And Downing Street pretend that they believe Keir Starmer was being somehow racist. That's today's smear Keir. Are you still keeping a list? You're not, are you? No, you're not. All right, read it to me now. What's on the list? Donkeyfield, Curry, being a lawyer, ode to joy, death penalty, accidentally says he has 2 sons on Sky News, helped his sister buy a house. He's a racist because he said Sunak doesn't get Brits. It's getting good now. We're going to be in double figures by this time next week. But of course, we probably won't have a jingle. Alison's in Crawley to steer us back to the Post Office compensation scheme. Alison, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Well, I'm just furious about Sunak. I'd rather smear Sunak because I'm just so sick of this.
What with?
Well, with his own vile and ridiculous politics and rhetoric, because he seems to think the solution to everything is a sort of 2-word soundbite and a bit of legislation, like stop the boats, get Brexit done, all these things.
Well, get Brexit done was Johnson's nonsense, not Sunak's nonsense.
Fair enough, but it's the direction of travel, isn't it? So now he thinks he can sort of solve immigration by bringing in a law to make it illegal to come in on a boat, or whatever. And you just think, no, you need to sit down and look at the problem in its entirety and work out a solution. And it's the same thing here. What he's done is jumped on a populist bandwagon and said, oh, right, we're going to quash all the convictions. Well, actually, these people haven't done anything. They want their sort of day in court, as it were, as been said earlier. They want to be personally exonerated. They don't want to be tarnished with, I wonder if she did, though.
No,
I
hope that. Well, Robbie raised that. Well, no, it wasn't Robbie, was it? It was the last caller raised that point. I hope he's wrong, but you know what people are like, accepting the invitation to hate on anybody, really, let alone sub-postmasters. They can hate doctors, they can hate sub-postmasters. Go on.
If it was you and your children had been bullied in school because you'd stolen from the community, and what have you, you would want absolute clarity on that, wouldn't you?
Do you not think? I do not think they get. Well, no. I mean, they're pretty close to clarity, but what would absolute clarity look like on this?
On your individual case, you would want someone to have.
Well, I think they still have that choice. They still have the choice to pursue an individual case, but a lot of them have spent 20 years. They'll just be taking.
Exactly. They need that taking off them. They need every individual case to be reviewed. They don't need to be fighting to have that done. They need to be having a commitment that will be done on top of compensation.
No, I don't know what's happening to your phone line. You're not down a mine, are you, Alison, again?
No, I'm afraid I am outside B&Q, but I was so mad driving along listening to you that I never call you from the car, but I had to.
Well, I'm very grateful. What are you getting in B&Q? What are you buying today?
I'm just getting some paint.
Right. Are you going to get it made up, or are you buying the ready-made stuff, or are you going to go to that zizzy machine where they mix it all up for you?
No, straightforward, pure brilliant white, whatever.
Fantastic. Be careful though. Pure brilliant white shows all the dirt, shows all the stains. It's a very unforgiving shade. Alison, take care. Happy painting. 10:56 is the time. I see the figure I think we're missing is 3.6 billion. The 3.6 billion pounds in contracts, in government procurement contracts that Fujitsu received after the December 2019 ruling. This is the point, the ruling that Kwame was referring to at the very top of the programme. That was signed off during Sunak's time as Chancellor and now Prime Minister. So since that December 29 ruling, Fujitsu have received, solo or joint, public sector contracts worth £3.6 billion. I was surprised Starmer didn't go in with that yesterday. 10:57 is the time. Chris is in Cowbridge. Chris, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. It's good to talk to you.
Likewise.
I come from a point of view, I've got no skin in the game on this. I watched the whole series. I binged it last night, and I was sitting there sobbing my eyes out.
Yeah.
It really got me. And so joining this conversation today and reacting to what Sunak's done, I think he's done the wrong thing for the right reasons.
Okay.
He's trying to put a wrong right the best way he knows how. I'm not a fan of Sunak.
No.
I'm really not. However, I think as a human being, he's trying to do the right thing with the strings that he can pull at his disposal. However, like with many of these sort of quick fixes, I think it's not thought through enough. And I think if it was me, and I'm trying to talk from my point of view, if I was wrongly accused and convicted of a crime I did not commit, I would not want some sort of, I don't know, highfalutin wave of a hand, oh, you're all free, you are all good to go. I would want, well, hang on, you publicly humiliated me, trashed my name, trashed my life, I lost my house, I lost my savings. I want to be told I'm innocent.
That I think is, and the only reason I'm cutting you off in your prime is because I think that there is someone almost in that category or close to that category waiting on the line. Shall I talk to Charlotte now or shall I talk to her after the news? On the other side of the news. I will. Charlotte, don't go anywhere. I'll come to you immediately after the latest news headlines. We'll hear from Charlotte, and depending, of course, upon what she says, we'll either crack on or change course. And if we do change course, we'll be looking at something Keir Starmer has done, which I think is really interesting. Great interview yesterday with our political editor, Natasha Clark. And in conjunction with other announcements, it's fair to say that Starmer is coming out very heavily in favour of what has become known as the nanny state. You consider that senior Conservatives like Jacob Rees-Mogg still have their childhood nanny looking after them. She went campaigning with him, I remember, when I was a gossip columnist and he was trying to become an MP. He took his nanny on the campaign trail. How they simultaneously argue that the nanny state is a bad thing, I've never quite understood. But this could be really big, I feel. 3 minutes after 11 is the time. On with the conversation about compensation. Oddly enough, we've sent Henry Riley down to the Post Office inquiry today. I think that might be the first time we've sent anyone there, which is indicative perhaps of the astonishing turnaround in the levels of interest in that inquiry prompted by that TV programme. We'll catch up with him shortly. And of course, at 12 o'clock, it being Thursday, then it will be Mystery Hour, which will bring a little much-needed levity into proceedings. But before that, Charlotte is in Braintree, and I think you've got a rather more personal connection to these issues than the rest of us, Charlotte. What made you pick up the phone?
I've only caught the last few minutes of your programme, to be honest. My dad listens all of the time.
Well, give him our love, won't you?
I will. And it is personal to me. I lost my post office. We decided to close it because we had 5 years of putting in the money ourselves. My husband had to go back to work to fund those losses. And we had a vicious cycle of taking the money out of the till of the shop to pay for the shortfalls. So then when it came to buying stock, we couldn't buy stock because we didn't have the money in the shop. So we had to get high value credit cards, and we dug ourselves a massive hole. And went to our parish council and said, look, we're in trouble. We don't know what to do. We've got no more credit facilities. We're going to have to close the shop and post office. Their response was the next day to come in and cancel their papers with us.
Lord.
And didn't support us in one way at all. We offered to move the post office maybe to the village hall because then would be less costs associated with it because of the electricity and everything else.
Yes.
But they said no, they didn't want to do that. But a month after we closed the post office, guess what?
They had
one in the village hall.
They had to open one in the village hall. Let me take you back, if I may.
Yes.
To what were you hoping would happen as this went on? Because when you first decided, and no doubt you and your husband talked about it, and one of you said, well, we're going to have to make it up out of the shop takings, aren't we? We're going to have to make up the post office shortfall from the shop takings. And you couldn't actually at the time see any other option. But you certainly weren't expecting that to go on for 5 years the first time you did it.
No, the first time happened for me within the first couple of months of taking over the shop. And it was a different role for me completely.
Right.
I thought I was incompetent. I thought I didn't know how I was doing my job, and the helpline told me that. I met somebody who lives local who works for Fujitsu.
Right.
He told me I was incompetent as well.
Good Lord.
And actually, I'm quite a bright woman.
Yes.
But then maths isn't my strong point. I always hold my head up for that.
Okay.
And Yeah, I thought maybe I was doing it wrong.
And what sort of sums were we talking about, Charlotte?
£400, £500, a few £100s a time. There was one month where I lost all of my salary because someone said to me, don't take it out of the shop, don't pay it cash, get it done through your salary. You've got a paper trail then. And that is the best thing someone told me, because when it came to going through the shortfall claim scheme, which I was able to do, I could prove that, but only for the last 2 years. So we lost 3 years. They never looked at that, because when we closed, they took all of our paperwork back.
And carry on. Sorry.
Go on. The day we closed, they came in and did an audit. Our books were balancing the day before. When we came, look, there's another £1,000.
Good grief.
Another £2,000 we had to pay on the day. It's just disgraceful.
So, I mean, everyone else has been watching this drama with their jaw on the floor. You must have been watching it in rather a different condition.
My husband and I, we watched it. We've been away, and we came back and we decided to watch it in one day.
Right.
And we were left bereft. We cried the whole way through, and we were so angry that this was all going on when we took on our post office. No one said anything to us, and just left devastated. And it's not until today that I actually feel, okay, I can get on with the rest of my life now.
Gosh.
Because this last week it's made me so angry. And no one will say sorry.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you. There's two things. No one will say sorry. And also, I know a lot of people were told that they were the only ones that this was happening to, which must be extraordinary. Now you've seen the full scale of the scandal.
Absolutely extraordinary, yes. And I never signed up for the unions. I just kept myself to myself, so I never got wind of what was going on. Right. So I just thought we were there in our little village, and I was making mistakes. They told me my staff were stealing from me. I didn't question my staff because I knew them better than that. Oh. But I did work every single hour in the post office for a month, and there was still money gone missing. So I knew that I hadn't taken it. So there was no other way than it just being a computer.
Incredible. And what about the community at large? We had a caller earlier, you probably didn't hear him, suggesting that, even now, there will still be some people in some villages who sort of subscribe to the no smoke without fire school of thought.
Absolutely, yes. We stopped going out locally because of the dirty looks and you shut the shop, I can't get my milk anymore, and just the vindictiveness of people. And people I thought were my friends really turned on us for no reason at all. Now we can go out, but still some people will not talk to us because we shut their shop.
Good Lord. And I mean, so it's slightly different, isn't it, from the stigma of people thinking that you'd committed a crime, which is what other people have. But you couldn't keep the shop open because you couldn't afford to subsidise the post office
we asked for help. No one would help us.
Oh,
no
Charlotte.
one would listen or understand that it wasn't our choice. My husband's family started the post office in our village. It was not our intention to close it. And then they put a community asset value order on our house. So that just further put the nail in the coffin for us.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve any of this, did you? So
no.
I mean, what was the toughest bit of all of it, do you think?
Not being listened to.
Yeah.
Not being supported by our village. And I think when I watched the programme and Jo Hamilton had the support of her village, that for me really upset me, because my husband's he's born there, he's lived there all his life, and no one believed in him.
Good Lord.
They didn't want to support him, which is a real shame.
Well, it is, and you can never get that back, can you? That loss of faith.
No, you can't. You can't get that back. That loss of, we've not been part of any community events because we've not felt comfortable. Our son didn't go to the local school in the end because he was bullied. He was 8 at the time,
right.
And he would saw someone in the street and he'd say, "Oh, hello, Sonia," and she'd say, "Oh." And she'd just look at him up and down and just walk away. Oh. And he said, "Mum, why doesn't she talk to me anymore? I used to serve her papers on a Saturday." I said, they're upset that we shut the shop.
And what you remind us of as well is that the stories that go beyond the ones that are covered in the drama, the stories like yours, where you weren't arrested or convicted, but your life was absolutely ruined.
It was really turned upside down.
Oh, and where do you sit now with regards to this? Are you affected at all by the compensation, or?
No, we're completely out of that.
Okay,
we're completely out of that. I did speak to one of the lawyers that everybody's talking about it now.
Yes.
But because we went through the shortfall scheme, I don't think we've got anything we can do anymore.
Even though there's 3 years worth of...
There's 3 years, yeah. And, I don't know if I've got the energy.
No, I was about to say, you'd have to gird your loins again, wouldn't you? Strap on your armour and get out there.
Yes, I'm not sure that I can face that anymore. I've been very lucky that our family has been a great support to us, and I do thank them for that.
Well, you have preempted my final question, actually, Charlotte, because I was about to say, how did you manage to survive? Some marriages wouldn't have survived. Some people wouldn't have survived.
Well, this is it. My marriage is very strong, and my husband's been a great support. And our family's been great. And we've had a couple of friends that have been by our side, which is, really good. But the majority just, turned on us.
You sound lovely. You really do. I bet you enjoyed the work, didn't you, before it all?
I loved it. Yeah. I really, really loved it. It was really nice to give to the community, and to hear everybody's stories every day. And it was something we were willing to do until we retired.
And there it is. It'd be nice if they threw a party for you or something, wouldn't it, in the village? You should
or just to say, we're really sorry we didn't listen.
Yes. Yeah, well, anyone listening to this who recognises your voice or your story knows exactly what they need to do. You don't need long letters of apology.
Not at all.
Just a nod and an acknowledgement, and I'm sorry that we didn't listen to you, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Because you always listened to us belly aching when we came into the shop to pay the paper bill.
That's the one.
Well, there you go, Charlotte. Give our love to your dad as well. It is just coming up to 11:13. That's perhaps why the drama was so powerful. Charlotte, immediately human. Not a number on a spreadsheet or even a story in Private Eye, but just an incredibly human tale of a life turned upside down, undeserving. Injustice, really, a fundamental sense of injustice and unfairness, which we still, as a population, despite the best efforts of some members of the political and media establishments to have us at each other's throats all the time, we've still got an almost instinctive opposition to unfairness, I think, as a population. I hope so. And that, in a sense, is where we turn our attention next. Keir Starmer has, I think, made one of his most significant interventions yet on the issue of the so-called nanny state. I'm going to find out what you think of it after this. It's 16 minutes after 11, and it is, it's a bit of a myth that the Labour Party under Keir Starmer haven't put quite a lot of flesh on bones. It's a myth that I fell for, but people sent me the evidence that actually they have come out with. Rachel Sylvester, writing in The Times last week, was very strong on this subject as well. They have got quite a lot of bold and not quite revolutionary, but bold and significant policies in the pipeline. But the question of what he stands for as well has been one that critics have claimed is hard to answer, and actually critics and admirers alike perhaps have claimed that it's hard to answer. I've met Starmer on a couple of occasions and spoken to him several times now, and I genuinely believe that he stands for a brand of politics that seeks to use power to improve the lives of people whose lives are most in need of improvement. It's in a sense almost the opposite of so-called trickle-down economics, where people seek to persuade you that by making the rich people even richer, everybody is better off. It's an incredible coup, really, an ideological coup that's taken place in this country in recent years, whereby these dodgy lobby groups that call themselves think tanks without ever telling you who pays their wages, in cahoots with right-wing media, have created the idea that pursuing the interests, serving the interests exclusively of people who are rich enough to secretly fund think tanks or own newspapers, serving their interests exclusively would somehow benefit a population. Oh, we can't possibly put taxes on sugar, or we should definitely not ban tobacco, or now big oil, of course, is very much in bed with the same engines of propaganda, the same engines of influence. Any curtailment of rapacious profiteering is a bad thing. It's why that particular brand of Brexiteer to use a dreadful word, talks about regulation all the time. They don't mean making your life easier. They mean making your life less safe so that the people who are selling you stuff or employing you can make even more money. Regulation covers things like cladding on blocks of flats. Regulation covers things like food safety and warmth at work. You know, regulation is protection. Think of regulation as protection, and then you will begin to see what's really going on in the dark places that constantly bleat about how we need to have bonfires of red tape and get rid of regulation. And the phrase nanny state has moved into the same space, hasn't it? The phrase nanny state has become a negative. I'm not sure when. I'm not even sure when it first appeared in public parlance, but it's all the same people. The people who think that you shouldn't be expecting the super rich to shoulder a little bit more of the burden of looking after the population. The people who think that stopping big businesses from pouring poison down our children's throats, or getting them hooked on cigarettes, or feeding them mountains of sugar for breakfast every day. The people who argue that you shouldn't have any restrictions on that kind of thing. The people who hate the idea of school dinners being made free by Sadiq Khan, free at the point of service, of course, free for children. They hate it because they are motivated entirely by greed. It's a mad thing. Once you understand it, everything fits into place. Seriously, absolutely everything. I went after Nadeem Zahawi yesterday because I couldn't believe he was trying to rehabilitate his image with the help of some members of the media who didn't mention at all that he got sacked as chairman of the Conservative Party after he was found to have breached the ministerial code. He had to pay a massive fine to HMRC as part of a 7-figure settlement over his own tax affairs. And he now is casting himself as someone who should be offering up economic advice about what the next budget should look like. It's incredible. And of course, it turns out that he is in the Adam Smith Institute. He is a fellow of the Adam Smith Institute. And that is how you achieve this kind of influence. What is the influence designed to do? Serve the interests of the super rich. And of course, it's very easy to prove that that's not true by disclosing who it is that funds them. But they never do. Funny that, isn't it? And under Liz Truss, it reached its apotheosis. The revolving door from these lobby groups into Downing Street was going so fast it was a miracle it didn't take off. They got all their dreams suddenly came true. The Institute of Economic Affairs claimed that it had effectively co-opted Downing Street, and then, or rather, another Conservative commentator said that it had, and the bloke who ran the outfit put up a sunglasses emoji, I think. It's all in How They Broke Britain by James O'Brien, a massive bestseller in all good bookshops and most mediocre ones as we speak. And once you understand it, everything makes sense. You know, you've got the Daily Telegraph today, a bloke called Alistair Heath, writing about how the post office scandal shows that the mysterious establishment has broken Britain. This is a bloke who thought that Brexit would be a good idea, thought that Boris Johnson would be a good Prime Minister, and who thought that Kwasi Kwarteng's budget was the best he had ever seen in his life. And he's still getting paid by the Daily Telegraph to offer up political opinions. Why? Because his political opinions suit the interests of the oligarchs, of the owning classes. So once you've got your head around it, it all makes sense. And that's why it's interesting that Keir Starmer has picked a fight. He hasn't named the enemy, but he's defined the battlefield. And it is a battlefield that very much contains the words nanny and state.
We want to encourage good parenting, but I don't think we can just turn our back on this. One of the proposals we put out there is supervised toothbrushing for 3 to 5 year olds. And lots of people say, it's a nanny state. I have to say, when I first read the statistic that for 6 to 10 year olds, the biggest cause of admissions to hospital is decayed teeth, I was really struck. That is shocking. And I don't think you can simply say, well, that's none of our business. It is our business because it's the health of the child. But also, once you've got a child admitted into hospital, it's costing the taxpayer a fortune. So I'm not saying it's the state and not parents. It's got to be both. I'm up for that fight. If people want to say to me, I don't think you should be doing that, just let it happen. If this was a parent for treated children this badly, as badly as the UK government has, there'd probably be child neglect. And if that's bad.
It's really interesting, that clip. That's Keir Starmer in a broadcast exclusive there with our political editor, Natasha Clark. It's really interesting that, because I'm going to level with you. All right? The first bit, I may even play it to you again, and then the first bit, when he talked about supervised toothbrushing, my heart sank. I thought, oh, for God's sake, are you serious? Supervised toothbrushing? But I carried on listening. And he explained that tooth decay is the major cause of hospital admissions for 6 to 10-year-olds in this country. And that's the point at which you cannot possibly criticise any attempt to stop children having to go to hospital because their teeth are rotten. And how do you do that? Well, you just make them look after their teeth. You help them learn to look after them. Well, the parents should be doing that. Yes, possibly. It's a perfectly reasonable position to argue that the parents should be doing that. But guess what, Sherlock? They're not. Which is why tooth decay is the single most popular reason for a 6 to 10-year-old child to be admitted to a hospital in the United Kingdom. And that is really interesting, because he is announcing something and that's just one element of it. It's a full-page piece in The Guardian today where he essentially says, on the election ballot paper will be the future of our children. If I was the sub-editor, I'd have put that the other way around, actually. I said the future of our children will be on the election ballot paper. Sounds better. But hey-ho, what do I know? If parents treated their own children the way this government treats the nation's, the word used would be neglect. So he's looking at the mental health crisis. He's looking at cutting waiting lists for mental health treatment by putting 8,500 more staff straight into the system, specialist mental health support for children in schools, delivering an open access mental health hub for every community. And this is fascinating because school absenteeism is a big problem, and there are two approaches to it. You can either shout about how awful parents are, or you can try to fix the problem. And that, I think, is where our politics is heading as the general election approaches. From the other side of the field, there will be desperate attempts to turn it into a culture war. The Tories currently engaged in a sort of circular firing squad over the ludicrous Rwandan scheme, which, if any plane ever takes off, is not going to touch the sides of the asylum backlog. And yet all of the political energy of the Tory party and their ludicrous infighting faction seems to be dedicated to that issue. And Keir Starmer is now beginning to do what everybody hoped he would do, but some perhaps had begun to fear that he wouldn't. He's beginning to put together a proper package, a proper platform. And absolutely intrinsic to this platform is the belief that the role of power, the purpose of power, is life improvement. Trust me, if he doesn't deliver, I'll be going after him like a rat up a drainpipe. But goodness me, doesn't it feel unfamiliar to hear from a mainstream serious politician who is both principled and dedicated to improving lives while conscious of the fact, acutely conscious of the fact, I mean incredibly conscious of the fact that you can't do anything if you don't win elections. So what is interesting about this politically is that he is not seeking the votes of the people that he's promising to help. So if you were to think of modern conservatism, by which I mean post-Brexit, the rancid era of Tory politics, the moral corruption of Johnson, the ideological bankruptcy, the think tank-driven vampirism of Liz Truss, the absurdity of Rishi Sunak, the circular firing squad of a parliamentary party with people like 30p Lee and Jonathan Gullis competing to be the most obnoxious and then being rewarded for being the most obnoxious member of the backbenches by being made a deputy party chairman or something like that. This astonishing morass of mediocrity and unpleasantness that populates the Tory benches. Their politics is dedicated to telling people that they will give them, that not only that they will give them stuff, we will help you, because that is pretty hard to sustain now. The Brexit that they promised would improve people's lives has made everything worse. So they are reduced to campaigning on a promise to make other people's lives worse. This is, I think, the fundamental battlefield upon which the next general election will actually be fought. The Tories will be promising constantly to make other people's lives worse. If there are a few tax cuts, that gets filed under a promise to make your life better. Except, of course, it won't, because tax cuts mean public service, public spending cuts. And God knows this country needs investment at the moment, not yet more scraping cash out of the public sector and popping it in the pockets of people who pay more tax than everybody else. So that, to me, is the battleground. The Tories will promise to make other people's lives worse. Unemployed people, poorly people, foreign people, students who've come here from overseas, they can't bring their families anymore. Ha 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 ha. Refugees will be deported to Rwanda. People who haven't worked for a while will be horsewhipped into their local warehouse. All sorts of wonderful policies coming from the Tories. Labour, under Keir Starmer, will promise to improve the lives of people who most need it. Now, that might not be you. Your children don't need to receive help in brushing their teeth. Your children don't have mental health problems. Your children are not being admitted into hospital with an eating disorder. That figures up by 90% in the 5 years to 2021. This is what he means. 200,000 children waiting for mental health treatment, many regularly skipping school as a consequence. More people, 90% more children and young people admitted to hospital with an eating disorder since 2016 to 2021. That's up by more than a third in the following year, 2021-2022. Obesity, 2 in 5 children leaving primary school overweight. But most of all, and I can't believe this either, the number one reason for young children being admitted to hospital is to extract rotten teeth, because it's so difficult to see a dentist. After 14 years of Tory rule, even the rise in life expectancy has stalled. Children are shorter than they should be, shorter than their comparators, their peers in other countries. So this is an incredible statement of intent. We will improve the lives of children. And this line here, if parents treated their own children the way this government treats the nation's children, the word used would be neglect. And here is a guest from Tufton Street to tell you that the state shouldn't have any role whatsoever in any of this. Instead, it should all be the role of the parents. Just please don't ask me what happens if the parents aren't doing all the things that I insist they should be doing, because all I'll do is shout louder that the parents should be doing it. In fact, I may even punch the desk with my fist. I'll go, the parents should be doing it. And I say, but they're not. They don't know that they should be. They can't see a dentist. They're not mental health professionals. They don't know how to help people with eating disorders. Well, the parents should be doing it. That's all they've got. It's pathetic. Usually people speaking from a position of immense privilege, of great wealth. The parents should be doing it. How can a parent treat an eating disorder, you flump? These people are awful. Absolutely. Oh, here's my friend from a think tank to tell you why we shouldn't have. It's absolutely incredible what they've done to this country. First politician of my lifetime who seems prepared to fight back. Keir Starmer. Good bloody luck to him. Question for you. Do you think it's going to work? 11:31 is the time. Does an offer to improve the lives of children with eating disorders, children with rotten teeth, children who are leaving school, leaving primary school, obese, children with mental health issues, does a promise to improve their lives strike you as a way to win a general election in Britain, brought to its knees by 14 years of Tory rule? I don't have long on this, actually, so hurry up, ring me and tell me. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Dominic Ellis is here now with your headlines. It's 11:35. Listen to this. James, I'm 50 in a few weeks' time, and I've still got all my own teeth. I grew up in a deprived area. When I was in infant school, we had the school dentist come in twice per year. Remember, this is 50, so this is the 1970s, early 80s. School dentists would come in twice a year. They'd check our teeth, give us lessons on toothbrushing, even hand out free toothpaste and toothbrushes just in case we didn't have them at home. We'd use that purple gel to see if we'd cleaned properly, which was very amusing to the boys. That just reveals the plaque, doesn't it? It's like a temporary dye that hatches onto the plaque. I'm convinced that this is the correct approach from Sir Keir, but inevitably the ideas will be shot down and announcements clipped to suit the client media. We need more of this help for young families, particularly those struggling right now. And, of course, the fact that you can't see a dentist contributes, obviously, to an epidemic of tooth decay. But the client journalists who come for Keir Starmer will be claiming that the parents should be across this, should be doing tooth extractions now in your spare time. But is this going to work? I love it. But at the beginning of the last hour, I told you that perhaps my own leanings make me see almost everything Rishi Sunak does in a negative light. I do not want to suffer from the opposite of that condition whenever we come to Keir Starmer, which is why when he said we're going to have supervised toothbrushing, I thought, oh, you silly man. What sort of nonsense is that? supervised toothbrushing. That is the sound of privilege, right? That is privilege. I had no idea that tooth decay was the single main reason for 6 to 10-year-olds in this country, in England and Wales, to be admitted to hospital. 11:37. Tom's in Kensington. Tom, what made you pick up the phone?
Good morning, James. What it is, I was in a relationship for many years. The lady that I was seeing had 3 children from a previous relationship.
Right.
The youngest now being 11 and the eldest now being 15. And not once have they ever visited a dentist in their life.
Now, so therefore, tooth decay is considerably more likely to happen than it would if they were seeing a dentist regularly, regardless of the role that mum plays in their life. What are you telling me? Are you telling me that she was a good mum, but they didn't see a dentist, or are you telling me that...
No, I mean, all children, as we know, like sweets. But there's a limit, and you have to start to cap the sugar intake with children, especially, with ADHD and so forth and so on. And sugar intake doesn't contribute, it does contribute highly towards that as well.
Well, you know that. How old are you?
I'm James, there's a day between me and you on our birthdays. We're exactly the same age, less a day.
That's sensational. Are you celebrating tomorrow or on Sunday?
I am, tomorrow.
Well, happy birthday. I've got a godson who has his birthday tomorrow as well, and miraculously this year I've remembered to send him a present. So what do you think of Keir Starmer's suggestion then? Because
I think it's a great idea, to be quite honest with you, because, the children don't particularly do their teeth in the best of ways. Mum never really shown or taught them how to do it. Yeah. It'd be a situation of go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and,
No, but maybe, Tom, if I shout loud enough that mum should have done it, maybe their teeth would miraculously be clean. I'll just shout it really loud, and you'll point out to me, no, these children need help, they're not. And I'll just shout it even more loudly, and I might thump the desk a bit like that. And then their teeth will clean themselves. It's a miracle. It's a goddamn miracle.
But the thing is, you go into the bathroom and you'd find toothpaste wiped or smeared on the basin where they've removed it to minimise the amount of toothpaste on the brush.
I used to do that. I mean, that's why he says supervised toothbrushing, and your initial reaction is, oh, you silly old sausage. But then you remember, I used to eat a bit of toothpaste because my mum would smell my breath to see whether I brushed my teeth or not. I haven't brushed my teeth at all. I mean, you do need it. It needs to be drummed into you. It just doesn't.
I think it's a neglect, to be quite honest with you.
Well, that's the word he uses. He says if a parent had treated these children across the country, not just on the dental issue, but on the mental health treatment issue, on the and it was Keir Starmer's word, skipping school. Nathan, I understand why he didn't like that phrase, but I was reading what Keir Starmer had written in The Guardian today, that they are not going to school as a consequence of their mental health issues. The word skipping perhaps implies a little bit more agency and choice than these young people have. Again, I think if you shout loud enough, they should be in school, then apparently all the mental health problems disappear, and they just trip into school really happily and healthily. And you can cure eating disorders like that by just shouting, well, this is the parent's responsibility. Just shout it loud enough. You can cure mental health problems. You can cure eating disorders. You can cure anxiety, depression. You can clean teeth. You can clean teeth by shouting really loudly about parents going through experiences you've never had yourself. Tom, thank you. Monica's in Deptford. Monica, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. So, sorry, I'm aware that my story can sometimes go a little bit deep and be upsetting, but it's regarding my daughter who actually was really, really struggling with mental health.
I'm sorry.
And actually had to spend 6 months in a psychiatric unit for adolescents. And that the reason I've called is because Keir Starmer is hearing what I heard you say today about what he plans.
Yes.
It's the first time that I've ever sat up and thought, oh, maybe I can vote for this man.
Oh.
Now, I would never, ever, ever vote Tory, never.
Okay.
But he's just been so kind of weak with everything. There's never been anything from Starmer that's made me go, oh, this is really, really good. Until today, when I thought, actually, this could have made so much difference to our family if this came in before now, because we have been through absolutely unimaginable heartbreak.
Yes.
And, you know, this child, we ended up taking her out of school because the stress was just so much. And then we were begging CAMS for help. Yeah. And CAMS actually said to me that we're really sorry, but our waiting lists are so long that we can only treat the worst case scenarios.
And that with the appropriate warning, or trigger warning, or whatever you prefer to call it, the worst case scenario is an actual attempted suicide.
Yes, it's turning up at A&E with a child who is at death's door. Yeah. And that's where we got to.
That's not the fault of anybody who works for CAMS.
No, I really want to stress that. I know they want to do their job, but they can't do their job.
In fact, it's crushing for them. I think I wouldn't be surprised if some of them have got PTSD, because the horror of going into a profession to help and finding out that you can't must be immeasurable.
Yeah. Over the past few years, I've had so much contact with different CAMS workers, different child mental health workers, and they're all absolutely heartbroken at what they're not able to do. It's
such a straightforward thing, and the benefits are so obvious because, of course, catch it earlier, deal with it earlier. Children don't descend into the kind of hell that you've experienced. And if you want to get all cynical and capitalist about it, they become much more productive members of society much more quickly, giving back to the system that's helped them. Yeah, so I mean, it's horrendous. So my child is now actually an adult, and seeing that there's no kind of transition either from childhood mental health services into adult mental health services. So that was a whole other big thing that we had to try and work out how to navigate. And you know, I do look back and I think, well, if we managed to get help at the beginning, how different this could be. And instead of watching our child waste away and spending literally years waiting to get the call to say, you know, we're really sorry, but your child has died. I'm please God that call never comes. But it is interesting, for want of a better word, for want of a more powerful word, that you feel that this intervention from Keir Starmer is directed at people like you. I do too, which is why I promise you that if he doesn't deliver on what he appears to be promising here, I will be after him like a rat up a drainpipe. I really will, because it's so obviously needed. And indeed, the only people who can be critics of anything from the toothbrushing to the mental health provision are the people who think that if you shout loud enough, then everybody will fail to notice how morally corrupt you are. It's 11:49. I'm off tomorrow. I have to attend a funeral of a very good friend of mine that we lost a couple of weeks ago. Otherwise, we'd probably return to this Starmer story. But let's see if it's still bubbling away on Monday. Mystery Hour coming up at 12. Henry Riley has been at the Post Office inquiry today as it resumed with one of the ex-investigators facing questions, being held here in London at Aldwych House. And he joins me on the line now. Henry, what's been happening?
Well, James, good morning. This is Stephen Bradshaw who's being questioned today. He's accused by the KC of sounding like a 1970s detective and being at points overly aggressive. So just to give you some background, Stephen Bradshaw worked at the post office for 45 years. He started in 1978 and is still employed by the post office. He currently works as a security manager. Of course, that means that he has worked through all the way from when these complaints first began to today, where many of the convictions have been overturned. He said right from the start he was not given any information about bugs and defects from the top down. He said that the post office had told him there were no concerns and that he had no concerns. He said he wasn't technically minded. That was the phrase he used. And when he was asked if he had personal concerns about the reliability of the Horizon scheme, he said there was no reason to suspect anything was wrong, and he said, quote, management's reassured him. He also insisted that all of the investigations he took part in were done in a professional manner. Now, one of the eye-catching moments, James, and actually it led to various people shaking their heads who were in attendance, it's not just former postmasters, sub-postmasters here, it is also interested members of the public. I've been speaking with some of them who felt compelled after watching the ITV drama and wanted to come along and find out exactly what was happening. But one of the allegations, James, and indeed Mr. Bradshaw has said this, is his witness statement. He says he did not write his witness statement and that Cartwright King wrote his witness statement. That is a legal firm solicitors firm that is currently being used by the post office. That statement said that Horizon continued to work properly, and Mr. Bradshaw said he regrets that it went in like that. Have a listen to what he said.
I was given that statement by Cartwright King and told to put that statement through. In hindsight, after I've put further my previous statements, there probably should have been another line stating that these are not my words, but the statement is produced as a business statement. I did not write that statement. We were told by Cartwright King to put that in.
Who told you to put it in?
It'd be one of the three members of Cartwright King: Martin Smith, Andrew Balshaw, Rachel Panther. Will come from one of them.
So they drafted the entire statement and sent it to you, did they?
That's correct, yes.
And you didn't question it, you just signed it off?
Well, whether it was questioned at the time, I would have been concerned, but we were given the assurance that everything was fine to put that through, and they wanted to put it through. Nowadays, I wouldn't have put it at all with what's known, but the hindsight.
So that statement was used in court to prosecute a sub-postmaster, and as you heard then, the allegation from Mr. Bradshaw is that post office lawyers actually drafted his statement saying that Horizon was secure. So he disowned his own witness statement, said he wouldn't have done so now. The second part, James, which has really caught the attention of people, is his style as an interviewer. I referenced that the KC, Julian Blake, has described him as a 1970s detective and said that at times he was aggressive. He was asked about some of his tactics in those interviews.
I wouldn't expect anybody sitting next to me to say you're the only one in that position that this has happened to. I've never heard that be said.
Perhaps we'll return back to the interview then. Mr. Gardner said, "No one else is making mistakes like you." You were in that interview, you were sitting next to him. Did you correct him? Did you say, that's not an appropriate thing to say?
As I explained, it has to be taken in the right context. In this case, for pension allowances, everybody's pension allowance submissions in that branch was checked. The only issues within the B stock unit that Miss Brennan had, they were the only issues. She was the only one in that post office that had the issue for pension allowance. No other work was affected.
So lastly, James, on those interviewing techniques, the allegation was that he was involved, and we've seen by transcripts, in interviews where they were told, postmasters, you were the only one. Also in that interview, they were told, this was Lisa Brennan, who was a sub-postmaster, either you're totally incompetent and you're costing the post office £400 a week, or you're fiddling the pensions deliberately. And then lastly, James, as well, there is also another part whereby Mr. Bradshaw alleges that the sub-postmaster should wake up earlier in order to work harder and to get some of the money recuperated.
Extraordinary experience really for everybody involved in this inquiry, to having been largely ignored when they broke up for Christmas to now being by far the biggest story in town. Was that reflected at all in what you've witnessed today? I mean, I don't think they're used to having camera crews lying around, hanging around the place, let alone the great and the good of the British media, up to and including Henry Riley.
Well, exactly. Well, I spoke to a photographer outside, James, who said he was here 2 months ago and it was only him and one other person.
Exactly.
And that today there were well over 40 people in total. But Wyn Williams, who's chairing it, James, did make a joke that he'd read a sort of press reading that this will go on for another 2 years and that his wife had told him off, and he had to reassure her that it won't be going on for that long. So fair to say it's getting more and more attention.
And rightly so. I mean, you know, some people have been a bit sniffy and snobby about the fact that it took a drama to kick this into the space that it now occupies, but the more I think about it, the more I think that's simply a reflection of how important drama is, and indeed how important this story is. Henry Riley there, live from the Aldwych, where that Post Office Horizon IT inquiry is about to resume. We'll go to Barrow in Furness next. Mark is there to talk to us about Keir Starmer and the nanny state. Mark, what would you like to say?
Hi, yeah, good morning. I'm a retired dentist.
You sound very young to be retired.
Just lucky, I guess.
Yes, carry on.
I'm originally from Barrow, lived away for quite a while, moved back, and I worked in a town centre dental practice. And Barrow's quite got some quite deprived areas.
Yes.
And we used to get a lot of kids in, not regular visitors of the practice, usually in pain, and you do an examination, and there've been multiple carious teeth. I think one of one of the ones that stands out to me is that I remember referring a 4-year-old for a dental clearance. So what was left of 20 teeth, and that's the first time they've been seen in a practice.
And a dental clearance means you're taking everything out?
Everything, all 20 teeth are going, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So then it's... And this might sound dramatic, and this isn't anything that would normally be said in dental parlance, but they're almost disabled because they've got no teeth.
Yeah.
So the smile is different, the way they speak is different, and this was a common thing.
Your phone line's cutting in and out, Mark. I don't know why, but it's not your fault at all. But it means I won't detain you unduly. But a brief word on what you hear when the leader of the Labour Party says this is obviously something that needs to be done, and obviously the responsibility of government.
We set up a toothbrushing thing in school, and we had some fantastic teachers that did it, and it sounds arrogant, but we were taking it away from the parents that didn't look after themselves or the children. So these kids were getting the teeth brushed twice a day, so you were trying to stop them having most of the teeth removed in the teens.
How can anyone have a problem with this? It's just actually extraordinary.
It's beyond me. When I heard it, I thought, oh, my word.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I bet you did.
Because these parents that are not brushing the children's teeth, kind of out of it. Yeah. They're not watching the news. They're not listening to LBC.
No, and therefore that's what society does. It catches up the children who've fallen through the cracks that you describe, and the cracks that you describe are pretty big. I suppose I'm just trying to get my head around any notion of objection to such an obviously necessary and good scheme. I suppose it might be built upon a determination to believe that everybody is as unpleasant as you are. I'm very unpleasant, and therefore I hate this idea of helping other people. And listen, lots of other people are just as unpleasant as I am. And there, I guess, is the sort of Daily Mail Rupert Murdoch business model in a nutshell. Mark, take care. Thank you. I squeeze in Wendy in Eastbourne before Mystery Hour kicks off. Wendy, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
condolences on your friend to start with. Secondly, I met you in Lewis about 1.5 years ago and gave you a picture which you said looked like the fourth Beatle. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that. Yeah, was it me that looked like the fourth Beatle?
Yes, I drew a picture of you.
The fifth Beatle.
Oh, the fifth Beatle.
There's already
that's
four.
Right,
well, thank you for that, Wendy. That was very kind of you.
Lovely. It was lovely meeting you. Anyway,
likewise.
I'm a dental receptionist, and I've been doing it for about 2 years now. We have had a child of about 9 who's come in who'd never been to the dentist. But the big problem being, of course, that dentists aren't taking on NHS patients.
No, that's right.
Now, my dentist, well, we've got 3, but they will all take on a child. But a lot of dentists won't. You've read about this, children, who've got rotten teeth. So for me, what Keir's doing is absolutely brilliant. It totally makes sense. The other thing I would say is that they should, I think all dentists, NHS dentists, maybe even private, maybe that's a bit much, should have to see children. They can't turn children under 16 away. That is ridiculous in this day and age to do that to a child.
I mean, it is the idea of conducting this conversation without acknowledging what you've just described is absurd, isn't it? If I shout loud enough, then all the parents who aren't encouraging their children to clean their teeth will suddenly change their ways. Or you acknowledge that the change to the dental system has left hundreds of kids without access to a dentist, millions, thousands.
Which it has, but also, I've got 4 daughters, and I taught them how to clean their teeth, but they went every 6 months to a dentist who would stain all their teeth. The nurse would do it and showed them how to do it properly. Now, I don't think it's all neglect on parents' cases, to be honest, that you do your best, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly, and if a child's taught how to do it, that's got to be the answer as they get bigger, obviously.
Well, beautifully put, Wendy, and from the coal face, as it were. I think that's a moment. I may look back and laugh at myself for my absurd optimism, but I do think this is a moment. I think Starmer is beginning to show you what Starmerism looks like, and it looks a lot like prioritising the children who most need help over oligarchs and so-called think tanks, which has been really the constituency that the last 4 or 5 Prime Ministers have been most dedicated to looking after. Anyway, enough of the politics. It's time for the fun, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. I speak, of course, of Mystery Hour, which will be with us after this.
This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 12 is the time. Your weekly opportunity, yada, yada, yada. Just sit back. Seriously, light a cigar. No, don't do that. You're not allowed to anymore. I don't know, have a smoothie and enjoy. It is a bit of a departure from the sort of territory we explore for the rest of the week. I was talking to Carol about that, actually, this morning. There is no shortage of news at the moment, and certainly no shortage of things to talk about. But we do allow ourselves 1 hour a week of frivolity and fun, minimum. So I guess some weeks we do find room for a little more. But Mystery Hour is guaranteed frivolity and fun every Thursday at 12. You need to ring in and ask a question, and then someone else will ring in and answer. My favourite contribution of the day will win a Mystery Hour board game, which is going great guns at the moment. There's some very exciting news. I'm going to my first toy fair in a couple of weeks. You can find out more about that at mysteryhour.co.uk. And, of course, you can find out the terms and conditions for the competition to win one at lbc.co.uk. I think that covers it, doesn't it? I think we're good. We're good to go. Shall we crack straight on? I think we should. Bina is in Chipping in Lancashire. Bina, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
So I absolutely adore drinking tea.
Oh.
And sometimes...
That's very strong. I mean, some people do, don't they? Tea?
No, it's like my thing of choice, my drink of choice.
Lovely.
If I'm up, if I'm down, tea.
Tea.
So sometimes Yorkshire tea, other teas are available.
They are.
Sometimes when I make a cup of tea, it is like ambrosia.
Yes.
Not the rice thing.
You stole my joke. Carry on.
It's perfect, James. And then I can 10 minutes later make another cup of tea.
Yes.
And it's like bin juice.
Yes. Well, it's not quite like bin juice, but it is. It's disgusting.
You know when
and you're making it with the same cup, same kettle.
No, that's the thing. It could be. That's the problem. Depending on the cup, why does it taste wonderful, and then I can get another cup?
I don't know if it's the cup. I mean, some of the different things that play a part in. Well, wait. Let me tell you what I think it might be.
Okay.
I think it might be reboiled water.
Right, so I use a cooker sometimes.
What, the fancy tap?
Yeah.
Well, that's another reason it might be nicer. Only sometimes. So sometimes you use the kettle and sometimes you use the fancy tap.
So the cooker now is kaput, so I use the kettle, but I have the same issue. So I've had a cup of tea out of the cooker, cup of tea out of the kettle. Both of them are fantastic. I come again, and
then the second cup out of the corker, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
So disappointing.
Oh, okay. Well, that. So it could be the cup.
I know it's not me. I'm sure it's not me.
Well, it could be like you might have brushed your teeth or eaten something.
No, because I haven't done anything in those sort of 10, 15 minutes of me saying, I'll have another cup of tea. Nothing is different.
All right. So 2 cups of tea prepared under laboratory conditions.
Totally.
Where the only difference is the receptacle.
Absolutely.
Taste measurably and markedly different.
Shockingly different.
Shockingly different.
Shockingly different.
Shockingly
to a tea person.
Why would that be? And it's
Correct.
not the reboiled water, because you had the same problem. For people who don't know what a corker is, it's a tap that puts boiling water directly out of the tap.
Correct.
Is it worth getting? Is it worth getting one?
Yeah, because you can do everything with them, James. You can boil, your pasta, your rice, your everything.
Because we're about to do that and
do it
really, because I wasn't convinced. I wasn't convinced by the incinerator. Have you got an incinerator?
I don't actually know what that means.
It's when you put everything down the sink and then press a button and it chops it all up and pushes it down the drain. It's fantastic. If you like peeling potatoes and stuff like that, you just do it directly over the sink. So I got that. I'm very pleased with that. But we were thinking of getting one of those taps as well.
Do that, and
they're not cheap, though, Bina, are they?
I know. But I had my kitchen done a while ago, so
you went all in.
All happened.
You went because you're worth it. Because you're worth it.
Because I'm worth it.
There it is. But let's find out the answer to your tea question. Thank you very much, Bina. Why would that be? Stuart's in Ruislip. Stuart, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Stuart.
Every day a flock of parakeets fly over my house, very close together, very fast, and change direction. Why do they not bump into each other? And if you think about murmurs of starlings at night, same question.
Wow. Murmurations, I think it is, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. They're incredible, aren't they, when you see that, like a big one of them in full effect. So what, I mean, yeah, all right. I mean, it's a sort of spatial awareness question, isn't it? But it never, ever happens as far as we're aware, and that seems unlikely. Did you watch the One Show the other day when they had the bloke who feeds red kites in his back garden on, Stuart?
No, sorry.
It was incredible. He feeds red kites in his back garden, and there's footage of them swooping down and grabbing a bit of turkey carcass. It's quite remarkable. And they never bump into each other as well, even when they're much bigger than parakeets. I shall try and find out for you. Why do flocks of birds never bump into each other?
When they move direction and they're flying fast.
Yeah, we're not talking about geese in a V. We're talking about a fast-moving flock which doesn't appear to be following any preordained direction.
Correct.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stuart. You are on. 10 minutes after 12 is the time. Yeah, I mean, in case anyone's wondering, not known where the parakeets come from. All sorts of myths surrounding it. My favourite being that they escaped from Elstree when they were filming The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart. They had parakeets on the set, and they either escaped or were just released when filming finished, and they've gone on to populate the whole of West London with parakeets. But they are, you find it hard to believe if you're listening in Hull. My back garden, impossible not to see a parakeet of an evening. It's really it gets quite annoying after a while because they're very screechy, but then occasionally you get that flash of green through the sky, and it's oddly exotic. 11 after 12 is the time. Tom's in Sudbury. Tom, question or answer?
I have a question.
Carry on.
So I was telling my kids a sort of a random story the other day, and they said, "Why do they do that?" So I thought I needed to phone you. Yeah. So it was a couple of years ago. I was in Bristol.
Right.
I think I was on an MOD site, and I went to the canteen for lunch.
Yeah.
And I took my plate up, and the woman there who was serving me said, "I'll try not to imitate the accent while saying the words." She said something like, "Hello, my love.
Yeah.
That'll be £3.50, please, darling.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your change, sweetheart."
Yeah.
And so I told it to my kids just as a thing, and they're like, "Why are they being so nice?" And I was like, "That's a really good question." So how is it that region, and I don't think it's exclusive to Bristol.
No, what do you do?
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, it's not excuse. If you go to the East Midlands, you'd get the same sort of thing, but with different...
I was trying to remember where, and I was trying to think it's not kind of Yorkshire Lancashire.
Well, no, it might be. No, I didn't know it might be. I don't think that you... Well, so the question is, why are some areas nicer than others? Linguistically.
Well, no, it's why you've got these incredibly affectionate terms inside language in some areas where other parts of the country wouldn't even use that, or would barely use that with their kids, and some parts of society would only use it with their pets, you know. And it's
Isn't it more of a class thing than a geography thing?
I don't know. This is the question.
So pet,
because it's so
pet
affection.
in the northeast, pet in the northeast, Midduck in the East Midlands, pet in the northeast, Bab in the Black Country. Jess Phillips always calling everyone Bab.
Yeah.
I think it's a class thing, not a geographical thing.
But it's intimate, affectionate, you know. And as I said, it was like a woman like in a canteen or an MOD site. It's not like the most kind of, you know.
Well, you didn't necessarily expect to encounter that level of intimate affection, but is it? I don't know what the question is really.
Well, it's sort of why Bristolians so lovely, but then absolutely it's not exclusive to them, is it? So.
No, so I don't know. I like it. I've enjoyed this conversation, but I'm not sure it's ended with a question. Why are some people nice?
Well, no, it's more than nice. It's why are they using such affectionate terms in their language?
Yeah, but where don't they? I suppose we need to. Where don't they use affectionate terms of language? Because even, you know, a Cockney will call everyone darling or sweetheart, or won't they?
Well, I grew up in South London. That's not the kind of thing I heard all the time.
Yeah. You all right, love? You all right, love? You all right, darling?
Yeah, it's different saying. Yeah.
I mean, there is the question. Is there a difference geographically in the affectionate nature of language used? Tom thinks there is. I'm not so sure. But if Tom's right and I'm wrong, then the question becomes, why is that? 0345 606 0973. I saw the sort of bare bones of the question on the board. I thought it was going to be specifically about Bristolians, and I was conjuring up an answer that involved providing a warm welcome for sailors. and it's been passed down historically through the ages, and that's why everyone speaks so affectionately to strangers, because they're sailors who might have just got off the boat, you see. But I would have been making that up. Bella's in Oxford. Bella, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
So as we age, why does our hair go grey, whereas cats' hair doesn't?
Well, I mean, it does a little bit. They get a bit white around the muzzle sometimes. There is. I've got an old cat, and he's got more white hair than he had when he was little. But
yeah, I mean, I find the odd white.
Well, it's not hair; it's
like,
fur. That's the answer to your question.
Fur.
Yeah, it's not hair. It's
but we both have, I guess we both must produce the pigment that colours it. So why do we? I
think the answer is going to be that you're comparing apples and pears. You're not comparing apples and apples. It's fur. So, Do any animals go grey? Do gorillas go grey?
So I was thinking about this, and I don't think I've ever seen a grey gorilla.
Never seen a grey gorilla. Sounds like a children's book, doesn't it?
I know.
Why don't animals go grey?
Yes, that's it.
Specifically cats, but we are prepared to broaden it out more widely. I like it. Thank you, Bella. Maybe they have less stressful lives. They don't go bald either, do they? Lucky beggars. It's 12:15.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It is 18 minutes after 10. A few of you, I don't think it quite qualifies for Mystery Hour, but yes, it is true that a Conservative MP stood up in the House of Commons yesterday and claimed that the discovery of razor clam beds in the River Thames was a Brexit bonus. Me neither. But no doubt that will take a huge bite out of the 30 billion quid that I think the Mayor is detailing today as having been lost to the UK economy by that incredible act of national idiocy. But we haven't talked about it for a while. We should probably rectify that at the first opportunity, but not now because it's Mystery Hour and it continues. Ash is in Bath. Ash, question or answer?
I have a question, please, James.
Carry on.
So I've had one of those weeks where I've had to take my dog to the vet 3 times so far.
Good Lord. Have you taken it alone yet?
Yeah, I'm going to need to at this rate. And I found it really interesting how they tested for everything. They did what they called a sort of nose to tail diagnosis, for want of a better phrase, and found various different things. And, they found a little rash on his paw, so they gave him some cream for that. And then later in the week, they found that he had some swelling around his neck, so they gave him some medication for that. And it got me to thinking, what would happen if your dog was just suffering with a really bad headache or a migraine? You can't discuss it with them. How would they test for that?
Well, they wouldn't.
I guess that is one answer.
Well, they can't. I mean, they can look for a tumour or something like that, but if there's no physical symptom of it, then if the dog. I mean, why were you taking the dog to the vets? For them to find things wrong with it, rather than you saying.
I noticed he was chewing his paw, so I figured it was a paw issue.
Right.
So, but then they gave him one of those cones for his head, and then he smashed the cone off of a door frame and hurt his neck.
Oh. Sounds like you've got the Frank Spencer of dogs by the sounds of it.
He's pretty sizable and clumsy, yeah.
Bless him.
But they can't just leave him. If he had a headache,
can a vet diagnose a tummy ache or a headache? Is what you're asking, really?
Yeah, something. I mean, tummy ache you could, because obviously their stool sample wouldn't be great.
All right, mate. All right, people are having their lunch, Ash.
There's some things that you could only talk about.
Yeah, I mean, how can you diagnose animals with invisible symptoms?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, any animal.
Yeah.
A cow with a hump, be a camel. Sorry, no, actually not. Okay, I mean, yeah. Well, a vet will know actually, and it's probably actually a much better question than I'm giving you credit for at the moment. And a vet would say, well, obviously we do this and we do that, and then we do the other, and Bob's your uncle. Thank you, Ash. So we've got pet ailments, cats going grey. Why don't animals go grey? I think that'll do for the animal questions. Thank you. Is anyone listening? That's enough animal questions today. All right, that's no more animal questions for now. That Bristol, someone else has said that they had an experience in Bristol. They did actually think that the people of Bristol would notice. It was the dinner ladies when he went to Bristol University were noticeably affectionate. And as a Londoner, I couldn't quite believe my ears. My lover. That's another one as well, isn't it? Parakeets. What was the question about parakeets again? I've forgotten. Why don't they bump into each other? And tea. Why does Beaner's tea taste differently in different cups, even though all other variables are the same. 2 cups of tea made in laboratory conditions in different vessels taste shockingly was the word, shockingly different. Tina's in Cobham. Tina is in Cobham. Tina, question or answer?
It's an answer to Bina's question.
Tina is answering Bina.
I'm answering Bina about the tea.
Tina for Bina. Tina T for Bina. Bina
Yes.
T. Bina T,
Yes.
Tina, Bina T, Tina B. Carry on, Tina B.
Well, I've forgotten what I was going to say now
So have
after that. Right. If this drives my family mad, I will only have tea from a bone china cup.
Ooh.
And I don't know why. It just tastes better.
Yes.
If someone makes me a cup of tea in like a builder's type mug, I won't drink it because it tastes horrible. So a few years ago, I think it was my godfather who said, "Well, you see, the thing is, bone china isn't porous, so you're just tasting the tea. You're not tasting the cup or whatever else was in it before. Doesn't matter if it's been through the dishwasher or whatever. But if you have something from like an old mug, a cup of tea from an old mug, it's far more porous. So any other liquids that have been in that cup, there's a slight taint to your tea.
Well, so you're like the princess and the pea when it comes to tea.
Honestly, I am when it comes to tea. I'm the princess and the pea.
Tina and the tea.
Yes.
And so in terms of Bina's mugs, some of them will be more tainted than others, probably.
Exactly.
Unless she is actually occasionally drinking it out of bone china and then... But generally
that's when
speaking...
she likes her tea.
Well, can you get bone china mugs, or does it have to be a cup of tea? You can.
I'm drinking out of one now.
A bone china... How much is a bone china mug going to set you back then?
Well, no, not very expensive, not from Morrison's.
Are you...
or other supermarkets.
No, that's all right, and you get your points as well at Morrison's.
Yeah.
Are you... I'm going for that 10,000 point... What was it, 40 quid a week for 4 weeks, and you get 10,000 points or something like that? I've got that on the go.
Yeah.
I've got that on the go at the moment, Tina.
Yeah, it never happened.
Doesn't include wine, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be over the line. I'd be over the line by the weekend.
And also, additionally,
that's a great
wine.
Answer. Yes.
Wine from a glass that isn't crystal, that tastes different to me too.
Oh,
so maybe
you really have got a sophisticated palate. Also, I think I'm wrong about the wine. You can include alcohol on that. Which is before Morrison's.
That's all right.
Before Morrison's get in touch to complain that I've misrepresented their carefully cultivated promotional scheme. So that will be it. There will be different levels of taintedness and porousness according to which vessel.
Yeah,
but porosity. Yeah. But what she needs to do is get herself a bone china mug.
She probably has, because she said sometimes her tea's lovely. And that's what it is.
Oh, great answer. Qualifications, your godson explained.
Well, I just like tea from a china cup. Always have. Always been a,
So it's got you a round of applause. Got you a round of applause, Tina.
Yay!
Look at that. What a day. Thank you. 25 minutes after 12. That was Tina addressing Bina on the issue of tea. No. Phil's in Bedford. Phil, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, Phil.
It's going to sound a little bit daft on face value, but what I want to know is, on a nice, clear, sunny day, you stand looking at the sun in the sky.
Yeah.
Is the sun really there?
Come on.
I'll tell you for why. So I was on a nice cruise around the Canaries last week.
Oh, very nice. I must tell you something funny. So, so Nick Ferrari, who's on before me, gave an interview to Radio Times, and they asked him, how do you get on with James? Because obviously our politics are quite different. And he said something like, well, to be quite honest, we wouldn't go on holiday together, but we respect each other's position, or something like that. And I got a message off Eddie Mair saying, I'm pitching this to Channel 4. I think we're going to send you both off on a cruise together.
One at the bow and one at the stern.
So I think it would be that. Yeah, I'll go starboard. Anyway, sorry, carry on. So you're on a cruise.
Yeah, so on a cruise, and I was stood at the bow, and I was filming the sun setting, and you sit there and you watch the sun disappear, kind of, it looks like it sinks down into the sea, doesn't it?
Yes.
We've all done it when we've been on holiday.
Yeah.
And that last little bit, as it goes down, happens incredibly quickly, where, and then talking like moments where it disappears below the horizon. And it got me thinking, when we're looking at the sun, are we actually seeing the sun? Because they say that the light from the sun takes something like 8 minutes to reach us here on Earth. So that light and that bright, dazzling blob I'm looking at in the sky, is it physically in that position at that moment in time.
No,
Or
it's the position it was in 8 minutes ago.
That's what I want to know.
Well, I think it is, but I'll ask.
Physically set 8 minutes before I watched it set, because I'm looking at. I don't know if silhouette is the right word, but it's a delayed image, if you like.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And if you filmed it, would it therefore become almost oblong rather than round?
Oh no, you've lost me now. What are you talking about, Willis?
Well, if it's slowly moving like that, if you could film it.
Oh, you mean it's super fast?
Yeah,
you'd see it maybe moving.
It's a blur.
You're only allowed one question, but you can you can extrapolate from the answer if you get one. The answer to the second bit that you asked. Thank you for that, Phil. Lovely question. 28 after 12. Let's squeeze in Daniel, who's in Gateshead. Daniel, question or answer?
It's an answer. It's to help Bina with her tea.
Are you Cafe Daniel?
I am indeed, yes.
So Daniel has a coffee shop in the... What?
Yeah, no, it's going really well.
I'm giving you a free advert and you interrupted me.
Sorry.
It's ridiculous. What would your marketing manager say, Daniel? Daniel runs a coffee shop in the park, the big park in Gateshead, which is, of course, known as...
Saltwell Park.
What?
Saltwell Park.
Saltwell Park in Gateshead. Yeah. And he doesn't just sell coffee, he also sells tea. And therefore he feels he is qualified to add to Tina's answer about the tea. Carry on, Daniel. D.
Yeah, so Bina doesn't have to buy a bone china mug. What she's got to do is just find a mug that she likes and sticks to it. You can only taste 6 different flavours. Everything else is got to do with aroma. So we can smell over something like 90,000 different aromas, and they all come across as volatile aromas. So the way what you drink your drink from massively affects the way how that flavour.
This is why people have a favourite mug. It's not a silly thing, then, is it?
No, it's not. So, for example, there's a company called Kruve, Kruve, and they make a series of different cups, glass cups for coffee, and every single one of them will change the way your coffee tastes. That's got to do with things like the thickness of the lip, the width of the opening, how well it insulates the heat within the coffee, all these different bits and bobs. So you'll notice that whenever someone's tasting something, you can also see this within like whiskey, there's all sorts of different cups for different things, because the way how those volatile aromas kind of reach you is very different. So slurping your tea is actually very good, because what it does is it atomizes the tea and it increases the oxygen, and therefore it spreads those aromas up the top of your mouth, actually. And also through your noodles. So noodles, that's one thing, but that's also got to do with heat. But yes, that heat has got to do with the aromas kind of reaching you, and it enhances the kind of perception of the flavour, which isn't really a flavour. It's more got to do with an aroma.
Perfect. So you love your work, don't you? So I don't think Tina, to be fair, said that it had to be bone china, but that's what works for her. But so Bina doesn't necessarily. It's just, I mean, to be fair, she's going to ring in next week and say, I've made 2 cups of tea, I used the same mug, and one was rank and one was delicious, and then we'll be back to square one, Daniel. But until then...
There's so much going on there because of like minerals within the water, temperature, all these different bits and bobs. But yes, if you made everything exactly the same and you just changed the mug, it's got to do with the volatile aromas.
That's a great answer. Qualifications, the managing director of Prism Coffee in Saltwell Park.
That's the one. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's 12:31.
Cheers.
Thank you. Sorry, round of applause for Daniel. Amelia Cox is here now with your headlines.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
12:34 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the fun continues. Questions in need of answers are about parakeets, Bristol, cats, animals in general, and then pets, and also the sun. The star, the big thing in the sky, not the ridiculous newspaper. Alan's in Harrow. Question or answer, Alan?
Hi, James. I have an answer for you regarding the sun.
Splendid.
Right. Basically, you were right. It is actually not there when you're looking at it.
So to
what
speak.
happens is the sun is only 79 million miles away from Earth.
Oh, yes.
And the light, as you said, takes 8 minutes to get to Earth.
Yes.
However, if you look at a star, which are many, many light years away from Earth, they may not actually be there now. They may have exploded.
They may have gone out
years ago. Correct.
It's
We were
quite
still
hard to
seeing the
get
light in them.
it's quite hard to get your head around, isn't it? And you think about it, but it shouldn't be really.
It shouldn't be, but the universe is so massive.
Isn't it?
It's incomprehensible.
What are your qualifications?
I have no qualifications, just a great loving for astronomy.
That is your qualification.
Yep, absolutely.
No, your love of astronomy is a qualification, Alan.
Oh, that's good. I love astronomy.
You don't need certificates on this show, Alan. If you love something, you're qualified.
I know. I have been on it before once or twice.
I thought so. Well, you've earned yourself another round of applause.
Oh, thank you very much.
So it is technically not there, and of course the best way to prove that would be by citing, as Alan did, the fact that you can see, in quotes, a star that actually no longer exists because of the speed it takes light to travel, i.e. for the star to reach your eyes, as it were. When the star hits your eyes like a big pizza pie. Ian's in Prestatyn.
Hi, James.
Hey, Ian. Question or answer?
I've got a question for you.
Carry on.
I'm basically intrigued as to how much time has to elapse before it becomes acceptable to start digging up dead people.
Well, flipping it. Couldn't you take up chess instead?
It's basically the reason is I was in the churchyard earlier this morning with the dogs, and I thought, well, if I dug up Mrs. Miggins here from last week, there'd obviously be a bit of an outcry.
Yeah.
But if I found a burial site from the Civil War and started exhuming the bodies, oh, that's fine, Tony Robinson.
Well, I mean, it's a very interesting. I don't think it would be fine. Depending on whether it's a. But you get it in London. Well, in all big cities, but particularly I think in the city of London, capital C, where they're building a new skyscraper or something, and they find a plague pit, or they build it on an old churchyard. But I don't think you can just do it. I think you probably, even then, if it's an official burial ground, you'll need some sort of permission, however old it is, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but they'll find sort of like a burial site from, say, the Battle of Hastings.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting, and the next thing is all the ground's dug up and the bodies are coming out.
Yeah, but you don't know there are bodies there. There's two different types of scenario here. There's one when you know there is a body there and you want to dig it up, and then there's another one where, although you may well suspect there will be bodies there, you are going to dig up a field. And then if you find a body, how can anybody tell you off because you didn't know it was there?
Yeah, but you do find these situations where they'll start exhuming the bodies and think, well, this was where somebody was laid to rest, and the next thing is, well, we're digging them
I
up
think you'd have because you don't know.
In a museum.
But you're not qualified to know how old it is. If you stumble accidentally across a body, you've got to inform the authorities, mate. Even if it turns out to be, preserved in peat for 2,500 years. It could have been knocked off last Tuesday. So I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what the question is now. Never mind the answer.
No, it's basically you'll see like on.
Well, we can only talk about graves. Otherwise, there's not going to be a legal art. There's not. If it's a grave, when can you dig up a grave in order to do something else with the land?
Well, no, that's not what I was really thinking of. I was more thinking along the grounds that a burial site will be found, and then a team of archaeologists will go in and start exhuming the bodies and examining them to see what went on. And this is all very interesting, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously, if it is a graveyard, and that's
so wwhat's the question then?
How much time has to elapse before digging those bodies up?
But no, because if it's a graveyard, it doesn't matter.
But I'm not talking about graveyards. I'm talking about.
But then, how do you know it's a burial ground?
Because you may find a sword, or they think, or if there was a site here of a battle, so we'll start having a look, and you find bodies, and then they start digging a pit.
But I don't think they do. I think if they find a body, they've got to tell people.
Well, even so, it's still telling.
But
people
I don't think there's an age. I mean, I don't. How can there be a time limit on it?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. How long it has to elapse?
No, but how can there be a time limit on it? How can there be a time limit on it? How they're not going to go? Oh no, you can dig that one up, but you can't dig that one up because it's 2:20, are they?
No, but if you found a burial site from Saxon times, I'm sure that would start getting examined and exhumed, and purely out of interest. But that's so that would be sort of okay.
Yeah, but where is there a burial ground that's more modern that you wouldn't? Because you've said you don't mean graveyards. So what are these burial grounds that are too recent to dig up that you are speaking of?
Well, battlefields. I mean, you wouldn't start the vicinity of the Somme. Think, well, we'll start. There's a battle here, so we'll go and dig down and see what it was. But there's a battle here, 1,000 years ago. Let's dig down and see what we find, and obviously go
there
to
you
the
go.
bodies in there.
See, this is why I answered. This is why I questioned you in such a robust fashion. So we've got to really confine it to battles.
Yeah, effectively, or something of that nature.
So are there any rules governing which battlefields you can dig up in terms of how long ago the battle was? I'd be surprised. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. I'm going to answer a question from last week, because I think it was Simon that asked it, but I can't find his tweet. It was the one about darts, because I thought about it afterwards. And the reason why they have someone on the stage doing the scores with a pen and paper is for the players. Because the players don't want to look at an illuminated scoreboard or a television screen or anything like that. It essentially, for two reasons. Number one, it might affect their eyes a little bit. You know, if you look at a light and then blink a bit, you can still see the light. And number two, it replicates the environment and context in which they play darts, whether they be looking at a chalkboard or a piece of paper. So I think that was the answer to your question. If you can answer the last question about bodies, I'll give you the money myself. Patrick's in Camden. Patrick, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Patrick.
So with the bird question, it's kind of a rubbish answer, but I think birds are bumping into each other
It's not a rubbish answer. That's fascinating.
So I'm a PhD student, and I'm a zoology specialist.
Okay.
And this is just kind of an educated guess that in those big murmurations, the starlings are like touching wingtips. And so because they are touching each other with their wings, they're able to then maneuver their bodies how they need to. So they can then move away, so they're not actually colliding with each other.
Yeah, wow. So there is a sort of sense of touch is play. It's not like a radar or antennae or anything like that. Or sonar like a bat uses.
Yeah, and then I think like birds like peregrine falcons and things that are flying through trees and sparrowhawks and things, similar to just like an F1 driver versus someone like you and me, they just have much faster reactions than we do, and so if they need to quickly move out of the way of something, they're able to.
I think you've got a round of applause. There it is. Yeah. Round of applause for Patrick, please.
I had one more thing as well. So your hypothesis about where the parakeets came from.
Yes.
I have a friend who's a very excellent scientist at a university in London.
Yes.
And she studied that as part of her PhD. And I was telling your producer that actually the most accepted hypothesis now where they came from is...
The paradigm.
Yes, sorry, there we go. Is that there was an outbreak of avian flu when they were first released, and people were scared of having birds in their house. And so that's the likely...
So the parakeets got released because of bird flu.
Yeah.
That makes some sense, actually, I suppose. I didn't know that was the best of it. It's more plausible than Humphrey Bogart. Thank you, Patrick. Scott's in Edinburgh. Scott, question or answer?
Hi, James. I have a question.
Carry on.
So last night I was making my dinner, right? And I had a bell pepper.
Oh, yeah.
I chopped it open, right? And a bell pepper is obviously hollow in the middle.
Yeah.
And I thought, hold on a minute, this bell pepper is full of air. Where's that air from? If it was grown in Morocco, is that Moroccan air inside my bell pepper? Or is that British air?
I like that question. Is it not? Is a pepper porous?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Is a pepper porous? Is it porous only when it's growing and then once it's
that's
grown?
That's not a question. That's
sealed?
A tongue twister. Is a pepper porous on a pepper? I don't know. Really? I mean, it must be, mustn't it? Otherwise, it would smell a bit when you open. No, it wouldn't. Well, that is why Mystery Hour is so magical, isn't it, Scott? You could do it for 20 years, and then a question comes up that no one's. The air inside a bell pepper
is it a mix of air? Is maybe half of it Moroccan and half of it British?
Wow, I never.
Does it gather air from everywhere it's been? Keep it inside.
It's just an extraordinary question. Maybe nobody knows. You might have been the first person ever to think about this.
It's been keeping me awake.
Well, let's hope we can send you to sleep if that doesn't sound a little bit strange. I like it. You're on.
Yeah, I hope so.
Where's the air? What's the air in a bell pepper? Is a pepper porous? How much air can a pepper pour if a pork could pepper? No, I'll stop now. I'm sorry.
This is LBC Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
12:48 is the time. I'm very bad at saying thank you for things that are sent to me because I don't have them with me in the studio. If it's not with me in the studio, it's out of mind. So I'm very bad at that. And so I just want to say thank you to Velo Coffee Roasters who sent me some coffee earlier today. I think they're moving into Aldi. That's why they were bringing it to our attention. They're opening an Aldi near me soon. So thank you. I sent free stuff. The least you can do is say thank you. I also forgot yesterday. Do you remember when my alarm went off at 11 o'clock? And I said, it's quite a funny story. I'll tell you after the news. And then I forgot to tell you after the news. I forgot to say hello to Peter. So Peter is a guard on a train that I caught the other day. And this made me chuckle. One of the funniest things that happened quite soon after I started doing this job is I rang the gas man who was supposed to be coming around to have a look at my boiler. And I got home. It's when I lived very near home, very near the studio. I got home about 20 minutes after I came on air because I was waiting for the gas. And I rang the number that they'd sent me. They send you his number. And he freaked out. And I was like, what's wrong, mate? He goes, I've not. And he'd had me on the radio until 1 o'clock. And he turned it off and I'd rung him up and he didn't know what was going on. He didn't realise. So the voice was so recognisable. He thought there was something, like he'd gone down some weird vortex. So yesterday, or a day before actually, the guard on the train I was travelling on comes up to me and he's looking very businesslike. And I thought, well, crikey, he's going to ask me. I have paid for my ticket, but and what he was doing, he listens to the show on catch up. So he's got one earpiece in, listening to the show on catch up. And as he walks past, he hears me on the phone, but he hadn't actually got the show on at the time. And so he had a similar moment where he thought, what's going on? My earpiece isn't even in and I can hear O'Brien's voice. This is scary. It was like I was in his head. I was scared. And he told me the story. I thought it was hilarious. And I promised I'd say hello to him and to his sister, Effie, who also listens to the programme as well. And that's why I set the alarm for 11 o'clock yesterday, so that I'd remember to say hello to Peter. But I didn't. So I'm saying hello to Peter at 10 to 1 today and also to his sister, Effie. I also forgot to tell you that Lewis Goodall is in this chair tomorrow because I will be bidding farewell to one of the finest men I know. Finest men you could ever hope to know. I've lost two friends in the last few years and they were absolutely the very best of us. Anybody who works in radio would probably know Bob Sapaya, to whom we will be saying farewell tomorrow. A truly lovely, lovely man taken from us. But great surprise. Very, very unexpectedly, but I will be attending his funeral tomorrow, which is why I won't be here. My love to Jane and to Alice and to Ava and to Ariane. We will do our very, very best to give him the send-off that he deserves. But it means I won't be here tomorrow and Lewis Goodall will be standing in for me. 12:51 is the time. Questions that still need answers involve Bristol, pets, bodies and peppers. I like this from Mike. I'm going to rewrite it slightly to make it work even better than it does already, Mike. The question put before us is, are bell peppers porous? One week, I'm going to do the whole of Mystery Hour in rhyming couplets. Paul's in Stockport. Paul, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, mate.
So the regarding bodies in battlefields.
Yes.
So this is a part answer, I guess. It's to do with within the UK and foreign warfields. So the MOD have a team within their organisation called it's a bit of a mouthful, the Joint Casualty and Compassionate Centre Commemorations Team.
Right.
And whenever a body is discovered on a battlefield as far back as World War I, so the Somme or anything since then, this team go in and endeavour to find out who that person is or the regiment they fought for, so that they can be given a proper burial within a Commonwealth war cemetery.
Well, and so the cut-off point is 1914?
Well, that's as far as they go back. So I'm guessing that would imply that probably it is 1914.
Qualifications?
I'm a nuclear engineer.
Well, yeah, but no. What's your qualification for answering this question?
Just an interest in history.
I love that.
I used to work for the MOD.
I was looking for a joke there. What is that? Because it's not rocket science, is it? It's nuclear. It's not. What do they? Isn't there another figure of speech that they say? It's not nuclear science. No. Anyway, you got a round of applause. You got a round of applause, Paul.
Thank you.
Oh, lovely work. 12:53. Tiffany's in Camden. Tiffany, question or answer?
I've got an answer, James.
Carry on, Tiffany.
Again, it's to do with battlefields and burials. In the UK, we have the Scheduled Monument Act.
Yes.
So if anything is discovered on your land that has any historical or archaeological significance, you can't touch the land, basically.
So that would include jewellery, not just bodies.
Yeah, anything of archaeological significance, yes.
Yeah.
But generally, graveyards go into archaeological record within 100 years in the UK.
Okay.
So that's how graveyards can get moved, or then housing estates end up getting built on top of old burial grounds in the UK. So it's very on a case-by-case basis, but once anything has historical significance in the UK, it basically gets protected.
So, and you're clear on 100 years?
I think it's case by case, again, the historical significance of the area, but it's generally 100 years before a graveyard can get moved.
Okay. Qualifications?
I have a master's in forensic archaeology.
Woo! Round of applause for Tiffany. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it. It was a better question than perhaps we allowed initially. James is in Brentwood. James, question or answer?
Answer, please.
Carry on.
It's to the peppers.
Oh, yes.
They are porous to a degree because it's a living organism, so it needs to respire to allow air through, which would mean that it's probably going to be the local air.
Local air for local peppers.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably going to be the air from the supermarket if it's respiring in a supermarket.
Yeah. Qualifications?
Master's degree in post-harvest technology.
Do you know what? This show, mate, seriously, people think that radio phone-in programs are low intelligence. They think it's a medium for low intelligence. The idea that it's not radio for clever people, it's something I've spent 20 years proudly defying. But there we go. We move effortlessly from someone with a master's in forensic archaeology to someone with a master's in post-harvest technology. How about that? I don't have a master's in anything. What is post-harvest technology? Just how you look after crops once you've harvested them?
Yeah, basically just trying to keep the quality of the produce as high as possible up until the consumer buys it.
Fantastic. Round of applause for James.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You know in Morrison's when they used to sort of spray it all? Was that just a gimmick?
It kind of.
Yeah, I thought so. I told my mum that. She didn't believe me.
Yeah, I mean, it serves some purpose in keeping the temperature down.
True, but not like fresh, because it's already been picked. There's no point watering it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it might keep it moist to a degree, but you know.
But I think they've stopped doing it, haven't they? So it wasn't cutting the mustard. Great answer. Thank you very much. 12:56 is the time. Craig is in Cannock. Question or answer, Craig?
Hi, James. I've got an answer for you.
Carry on.
It's about the animals going grey, the pets going grey.
Yes.
I can tell you that it does happen.
A bit. Around the muzzle.
Yeah, certainly to a degree. Yeah, exactly. You're one step ahead of me with that.
There we go.
I used to own a Kelpie. When we first got him, he was about 6 or 7 months old.
Oh yeah.
And it was very much, it was black all over, and that area around his muzzle and his chin mainly was pure black.
Mm-hmm.
As he got older, it went increasingly white. He was 12 years old when he passed, unfortunately. Oh. And by that time, his chin was very white in colour.
Yes.
So, yeah, they definitely do go grey. Couple little bit of, I guess, the theory around it and that side of things. If you think about humans, we are, a couple of hundred years ago, maybe longer, lifespans were a lot shorter than they are now. 30, 40 years, which is the time you typically start to see the greyness coming through with most people.
Most of us would have popped our clogs by then, wouldn't we?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at that time, there would have been a lot less grey hair on people. And as both healthier foods came out and also medical healthcare, lifespans have increased. So the pigmentation, which is in the hair, as you get, and it is less so when you get older, would have more chance to come out.
Qualifications?
Now, if you think,
I've got a crack on. I've got to squeeze in one more. You've done it.
Sorry, both the dog and I've got a biochemistry degree.
There we go. Round of applause for Craig. You're only allowed on this show if you've got a degree at the moment. It's fantastic. Phil's in for Thornbury. Phil, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, Phil. We've only got 40 seconds.
Okay, very quickly. About Bristol. People from Bristol tend to say positive things, so cheers, drive, or all right, my lover. That engenders
a James Blunt
reaction. Yes. It engenders a positive reaction in the listener. So to specifically...
So you do really think that it is a thing? You think it's a Bristol thing, that there's a genuine, notable level of affectionate language in Bristol?
Absolutely, 100%.
And why do we think it is?
I think it's just a regional accent. It's just that it sounds better in a Bristol accent.
Maybe you notice. Okay, qualifications?
I've lived in Bristol for 50 years and I have a degree.
Well, there it is. That'll do. No, that'll do nicely. There you go. I've got a degree. There you go. What? It's getting very snobbish now. Getting very academically snobbish now, this programme. I do apologise. Everybody's welcome, even if you've got your degree at the University of Life. I don't have a favourite. I've got no idea. You choose. Go on. I've got no clue this week. It was too tricky. Let Roxy decide. Someone decide, quickly.
You can't give it to that Bristol fella. That was nonsense.
It was a little weak, wasn't it, in the final analysis. Which one? Come on, hurry up. I can't give it to him. He was rubbish. No, the parakeets. Let's give it to Stuart and the parakeets. I liked him. All right, if he hasn't got one. Sorry, Sheila. Over to Lewis Goodall with you tomorrow from 10 a.m. I'll be back on Monday. Whole show podcast, don't forget, on Global Player. You can pause, you can rewind, live radio. All LBC shows are there. Stay up to date with the latest news. Our new signing, of course, Carol Vorderman with you at 4 o'clock on Sunday. Pause and rewind live radio on Global Player because you're always in control. Globalplayer.com to get hold of it. Tom Swarbrick with you at 4, but now on LBC it's time for Sheila Ferguson. 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 LBC it's time for Sheila Ferguson.